Love reptiles? Don't miss this. If you're passionate about reptiles, amphibians, and everything cold-blooded, Reptiles magazine is a must-have. Each issue is packed with expert care tips, stunning photography, and the latest news in the reptile world. Whether you're a seasoned herpetologist or just starting your reptile journey, this magazine has something for you. Subscribe today and stay informed on the best ways to care for your scaly friends. For only $14.99 a year, you can step outside your algorithm and get exposure to things that you wouldn't normally see or learn about. My family reads Reptiles magazine, and you should too. Visit subscribe.reptilesmagazine.com to get started. This is the Expert and the Idiot podcast. If you like the show and you'd like to support us, there's a link to our Patreon in the description below. Some benefits include getting access to new episodes up to a month in advance. There's also links to USARK and USARK Florida. If you're not already a member, please sign up. Enjoy the show. All right, welcome to episode 59 of The Expert and the Idiot. Today we're talking to Nick Lillis from Unlimited Exotics. Pretty excited to talk to you, man, because I'm a big fan of black dragons. I want to get one, so it'll be cool to talk to you about those. Also, what else do you keep? I've heard you keep Borneo earless monitors too,
Yeah.
right?
Yep, I have Borneo earless. Besides Brandon's, I have Borneo earless. I have sail fins. I have a lot of Cyclura, and I have Shinosaurus.
Oh man, Shinosaurus are cool too.
Yeah, this is my first year of attempting to breed them, and man, it is so much easier than monitors.
Really?
Yeah, so it's basically like as long as you follow the guidelines, you're good to go. Monitors, there's no guidelines. It's kind of just shot in the dark. Yeah.
So what guidelines are there for breeding
For
the
the
Shinosaurus?
I mean, very, very basic. It's basically you have to cool them for 3 months. So you put them basically in like a wine freezer or refrigerator for like 3 months at 55 degrees. And then when you bring them up, you feed them for a week and pair them. And they lock instantly. It's crazy.
Really?
My first year, first year, like I said. And he saw her, started doing push-ups, and then walked up and started breeding her. I was like, wow, that was the easiest breeding I've ever done in my life.
Wow. And they're a pretty high dollar lizard, right?
Yeah. But the thing is I don't think people cool them properly. And I mean, it is very scary because you're putting it in the freezer or refrigerator and not touching it for 3 months. So I'm sure there's a lot of risk there. I got lucky my first time, I think.
So how are you getting them into that as safely as possible? Are you cutting off food at a certain point so they don't have food that goes rancid?
Start bringing it down, and then you almost cut it off completely for a week prior, and then you put them because you don't want their stomachs full because it'll rot their insides. So you want them pretty much empty when you put them into that state. And I mean, they didn't lose any weight in 3 months, which blows my mind.
Wow.
So, yeah, they're really cool.
And were they just like what were they in? Were they in tubs with like sphagnum moss?
Tupperware tub where you put water on one side and sphagnum moss on the other. And they really, I mean, I caught them a couple times. I'd open and check and they'd be in the water like hanging out. But most of the time they were just in like a state of sleeping, basically. They were just out cold.
Wow. And how big was the Tupperware container?
I would say it's probably about like 2 foot by a foot, maybe. It's not big.
Okay, because they're basically hibernating, right?
Yeah, they're out cold. They're basically sleeping. And when they got a little warmer, like in our area, I'd see them come up and moving. But for the most part, like I said, they're just sleeping. They're not even aware that I'm in there.
Dude, that is so cool. You have like all the stuff that I want. I mean, how much are the Shinosaurus right now in spring of 2025?
It's so crazy. When I got them, I probably shouldn't say I got them from a friend. I paid around $1,000, which was around market. They were around $1,500. But now they're like $3,000 a baby.
Oh my God, dude.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, my friend had them this year, and I was like, dude, I want some. And he's like, they're $3,000 a baby. I'm like, never mind.
And so if you get eggs from them, how many eggs are you looking at getting?
Well, they're actually live bearing. So
No kidding.
yeah, in 9 months, she's going to go into the water and just unleash the babies. And it's a 9-month gestation, which is nuts. But supposedly they have like 3 to 7 is like normal.
Dude,
Yeah.
that is crazy. How many live bearing lizards are there?
I don't know offhand. You have all the skinks and stuff like that.
Sure.
Monkey tail skinks, blue tongue skinks. And they just
are the Shinosaurus a skink?
No, they're their own thing. They're their own crocodilurus or something like that. They're their own.
No
genius.
Kidding.
Yeah.
They're so cool. Every time I see a picture of them, I'm like, I just want them because they look like a dinosaur. It's like anything that looks like a dinosaur, I want it. Like you look at the black dragons and they just look like a Komodo dragon dinosaur, like they're so cool looking.
Yeah. I love stuff that's so different to their own thing. Like shinnies, I love monkey tail skinks. I've always loved that oddball stuff, like even spinulosus with the monitors. It's just that stuff that doesn't fall in one category. That's kind of its own thing somewhere else. That's all my stuff. The really rare stuff has always been my kind of forte.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's awesome, man. I'm glad you got locks. And, geez, so 9 months she's going to, be pregnant or gravid rather. And then she'll go into the water and just dump the babies.
Yep. Crazy enough. I say this is my first time, but I guess it technically is. My dad does all this stuff with me, and we had a pair maybe 4 years ago, and he put them together, like cleaning cages and stuff. Cleaning cages, he says. I'm like, Dad, you paired them. Just tell me the truth. So he paired them, and they locked once. And when I actually sold them, I think it was about 8.5 months later, something like that. I was moving on to different things and decided to move on with them. And I sent them down to Ari Flagel in Texas. Yeah. When he opened the box, there was 3 babies in there. So one lock, she laid 3 babies. Yeah. So it was pretty nuts. So I knew I could do it. It was just a matter of raising the babies that I had for the last 3 years.
Wow. Well, that was a great deal for Ari then.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think because of all the stress and stuff, I don't think they made it.
Oh, that's too bad.
But yeah, he still has the pair in the Reptilandia Zoo. So.
Wow. Yeah, they look like little Allosaurus or something like that. You know, they've got that awesome head. And how aquatic are they?
They're very aquatic. I'd say 80% of the time they're in the water. I catch them basking once in a while, but most of the time they're swimming around. They sit like a crocodile with their head just above the water. So
dude,
they're very, very cool.
Damn. If they were like $1,000 a piece, I could deal with, but $3,000 a piece, I can't deal with that.
Yeah. And dude, I was so nervous when I got the babies because they were literally this big. I'm like, jeez. I looked at my friend. I'm like, I'm not gonna be able to keep this thing going. And he's like, dude, you keep all the baby monitors going, you'll be fine. And they're just so slow growing though. I mean, 3 years to adult size. For me, at least. I'm sure people could do it faster. But
yeah.
Taking it slow.
And what are you feeding them? Mostly crickets or roaches?
They eat worms, mostly.
Really? What kind of worms?
Like night crawlers. They start off on those little red wigglers, but they like.
Really?
Yeah.
So that's super convenient because you can just go and get those from Walmart and keep them in your refrigerator.
Yeah. I literally, it's funny because this week I always kept them in like, funny enough, in my parents' refrigerator because all my animals, like I'm at my house now and I have some stuff here, but my facilities at my parents, because they have a big horse farm and they have a big building, and I have some stuff in their basement too. And I have all my worms in the refrigerator, and my mom's like, this is getting out of control. So I just bought a refrigerator and stacked it with worms in their garage there. So it's convenient. It definitely is way better than ordering rodents or quail or anything else like I do for the monitors. I could just go to the store and pick them up, which is great.
Yeah. I can't imagine your food bill for the monitors.
Oh, it's crazy. I literally just placed an order, and it was $7,500, and that will get me like 3 months.
Oh my God, dude.
And that's not even all of it. That's just rodents and quail. We feed other stuff too. So that's just the base. Yeah.
Wow.
Monitors are not. That's why everybody always says like, oh, you're breeding monitors, you're getting this much for babies. And it's like, yeah, but my overhead is absolutely insane.
Yeah. I mean, Talk about a passion project. I want to ask you some more stuff about the shinnies. What size? So are they difficult to care for, or is it just the fact that they're difficult to breed? That it's like a year-long process basically to breed them, right? You have 3 months of cooling and then 9 months of gestation.
Yeah, which she will lay the babies and then go right back into a hibernation and then start all over again, which is nuts. It's just like a cycle. But I don't think they're not hard to keep at all. They're probably the easiest thing I do keep. Besides, like I have earless monitors too. I don't have to notice, and they're super easy too. Comparing to monitors, they might be some for kind of hard for your average person, but I don't really. There's not a lot of like care requirements there. It's just water changes is the hardest part, which nobody likes doing water changes, especially that big. But they're not hard. They're definitely not hard to care for. Anybody can really care for them, and they're nice because you could put them in like a 4 foot long enclosure, like any other setup, terrarium kind of thing, and they're fine.
So are you keeping them in like an Exoterra all glass so that way you have water on the bottom?
Yeah, I used for the longest time I used 3624s, 3618s, whatever the Exoterras are, and I just put a piece of plexiglass in the middle so there's water on one side, land on the other. But I got custom made glass enclosures now for all my baby water monitors, so I just got the same things made for them. So they have like a third land and then the other 2/3 are water.
Dude, that's so cool. It's so cool that they hang out in the water with their head popping out like an alligator.
Yeah, all the time.
I'm gonna have to get them. I'm gonna absolutely have to get them. I mean, it sounds like, and like how much, like what kind of a hot spot do they have, and what are you giving them UV?
Yeah, I give them UV. Everything I have has UV. They really are fine. Like at like a 90 basking and ambient temperatures, like room temperatures, like 7. Like my reptile building is like 78 at the lowest, so they're fine with that. I don't give them really a big basking spot because where they're from, it's not like scorching hot.
Yeah. And do they actively come out and bask, or do they mostly like how often are they out?
They don't like seeing me a lot, to be honest. When they see me, they go and dive into the water. But when I come in there and I'm watching them for a while, they'll come out and bask, but it's not for long. They don't spend a lot of time basking. Like I said, they spend a lot of time hidden in the weeds like a crocodile in the water.
That's so dope.
Yeah.
And do you track the water temperature to see what the water temperature is?
Yeah, the water temperature stays about the same. It's about 78, 80. It's just because of our ambient temps there. Because I have to keep the monitors really warm. So the whole building's pretty hot. And I put them on the coldest side because I noticed they weren't doing as great the hotter they got. So they don't like it really hot.
Okay.
So I actually had to quit the monitors and I moved them because it was too hot.
And do you just have a pair right now?
I have a 2.1, but I'm actually looking to sell one of the males, so I don't need it.
Okay.
And then I want to definitely put an emphasis on them next year to try to do some baby bloodline swaps and stuff like that. And I'm just going to hold back everything I produce.
That's a good idea. Yeah, get a bunch of females and make them cheap for me.
Yeah, I will. Of course.
Flood the market.
No, I'm surprised that more people don't work with them. I think it's just a demand thing. I don't think they're really around, and it seems like as soon as people do produce them, they're gone. Like you don't even get a chance to ask if they're available. Like they're gone that fast.
Right on.
Yeah.
So let's kind of get back to the beginning of everything with you and keeping. When did it start with you? I mean, how old are you now? I mean, so many people asked me to reach out to you. Rich Crowley, Uncle Mike, obviously, he told me to get in touch with you. I'm happy you came on because, man, I could scroll through your Instagram all day long. You've got so many cool things.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you both, and thank you for having me, man. It's really cool. I watch your stuff all the time, and I saw someone saying the other day, you are a great interviewer. You were meant to do this. For sure.
Oh, thanks, man.
Of course. But for me, this all started, I don't know. My dad has been a reptile guy and an animal guy my entire life. I remember when I was a kid, he'd come home and be putting a bunny in my hand, putting this in my hand. I actually grew up in a home where we had marmosets. So I've kind of had it all and seen it all. And then my friend owned a pet store near me, and I was probably about 12, 13 when I started hanging out in there and really getting a love for different stuff. And I just kind of, as anybody does when they get in the hobby, I kind of wanted it all. And you try to get everything and anything, and then until you find your niche. And I'd say that was probably around like 2008, 2009. I started doing that, and he turned me on to all the shows and stuff like that. So I think by 2011, 2012, I was vending my first reptile shows with just crested geckos, stuff like that I had. And I got out for a little while because I was moving and going through a bunch of stuff. So I got out for like 2 or 3 years. And when I got back in, I dove right headfirst into it and got into the monitors. And I really always liked monitors, but started to appreciate them for how crazy intelligent and how big I always love big stuff and how big they are and all that stuff. So when I got into them, I was just dabbling around, figuring out what I liked. And I came across a guy that was selling a black dragon, and it was like this big. And I was like, wow, how freaking cool is that thing? And when I was in it before, they were just unattainable. They were too expensive. You couldn't touch one. This one was around like 3,500, which is still a lot of money. But I saved up, and he still had it.
How old were you?
At that point, I mean, how old is he now? I'm 31 now. So
okay.
I was probably about 25 by then. When I was all settled in and realized the monitors were where my passion lied. And I was probably about 25. So I saved
That's a lot of money for a 25-year-old.
Yeah. I sold, honestly, I sold one of my dream cars to get back into the hobby.
Wow.
And it was a car that my dad and I built together. And it was just kind of going downhill, and it needed a lot more money to keep it going. So my dad was like, I understand it means a lot to both of us, but let it go. And we both kind of doubled down and invested into the animals, something else that we both like besides cars. And that monitor just stood out to me. It was always one of my favorites. And his name's Shadow. I still have him. And I purchased him and just raised him, and he became one of the best breeders that I have. And he's literally like a dog. When I go, come on, Shadow, he'll follow me down the aisles of the place, and it's awesome. Gave me a whole different perspective of monitors, just that one animal.
Yeah. That's what I want. I mean, like if I ever get one, I want to get it and do the enclosure right and keep it outdoors and, put the time in and all that. But I'm definitely concerned about the feeding and everything. I feel like it's a huge undertaking. I mean, how often are you feeding him, and what are you feeding him?
So we feed 3 times a week, which I don't know. Some people say it's too much. Some people say, because monitors, they have a fast metabolism, but you don't want them to get overweight because they're short-lived when they're overweight. Their body doesn't operate the way it should. They don't eat those big meals in the wild like that. They'll pick off here and there. So we feed 3 times a week, but I try to keep it on the lighter side. Mondays we feed quail. Wednesdays we feed quail eggs, and then Fridays I do rodents. But I'm very careful with the rodents. Where I'll be honest, when I was younger, I wasn't. Because the rodents they're a very fatty animal, and they put on a lot of weight, and you can't give your monitors a lot of rodents. So we try to give them a lot of birds in the beginning of the week, and just give them something different towards the end of the week, just a whole prey item that's different, because that's essential, is whole prey. So that's basically it, 3 times a week, and quail and rodents is basically their main diet. We do throw fish and other things in there once in a while, just to help with their skin and stuff, really.
And how many quail is he getting in a serving?
Like 4 or 5 adult quail.
That's impressive.
Yeah, he's 7.5 feet. He's absolutely massive. The biggest water monitor, besides like there's Chrono in California that Brian JTK has. He's just a behemoth. He's a sulfur water monitor. I'd say Shadow is the second biggest water monitor I've ever seen.
Wow.
Yeah.
And he's like your stud. He's
that's awesome. He's bred at least 5 or 6 females now. I had to actually cut him back because I don't want to be that guy. There's enough people producing black dragons, which we can get into later, like how I'm transitioning from more of the normal mainline water monitors into like stuff that really I think needs attention. But he was breeding everything and anything. And I think last year I produced close to 150, 200 black dragons.
Whoa.
I was like, I don't think the hobby needs this capacity of black dragons. So we still produce black dragons, but I only have one female that I let him, and they're like bonded. Like they actually get upset when they're not with each other, kind of bonded. And I only breed that pair now, and she produces about 20 to 30 eggs. And I do that like maybe twice, 3 times a year.
Wow. And do they bond with their keepers?
Yeah, definitely. I would say, I mean, every monitor is different, just like every person. Some are a lot more intelligent, and you could see a connection there. And that's him. I mean, from a baby, I just felt like he looked at me different. And I know that sounds crazy. I feel crazy when I say stuff like that, but he has that different level of intelligence where he could bond with me. And a perfect example of that, I have 2 animals that I could use the same example. It's him, and I have a Lillis Rocco one. They know the difference between me and my wife, and they know that they could push her over, and they know they're not pushing me over. Like I'll open the enclosure, and he'll like with her, he'll try to come out and like push her out of the way to come out. And with me, he just turns around and goes and backs. Like he knows that he's not going to win, that I'm just going to pick him up and put him back, or she can't pick him up. So he's just going to bulldoze her over. And the Lewis side's the same way. She screams and runs, so he thinks it's funny. So he just bulldozes past her.
That's funny.
Yeah.
The I don't think I kind of feel crazy too when I say the same, when I say things like that, like about my Argentine boa. Like when I come in the room, first of all, snakes are supposed to be like nocturnal, right?
Yeah.
She goes in her hide and goes to bed 5 minutes before her lights go out.
That's funny.
So like she goes to bed when the lights are out, and then she comes out and basks and moves around all day. And if I'm in the room, she wants to come out. She'll start pushing while I'm in the room. I have cameras in the room, and I can see she doesn't push when I'm not here. Mm-hmm. So it's like, yeah, you can, I don't know. I used to feel crazy, and it's like, but it's true. It's what's happening, like I have it recorded, it's documented, so now how easy is it for you? Like, let's say, well, there's a couple things I want to talk about here. I mean, I there's a ton of black dragons out there, so like, how do you vet your customers to make sure that they're going to be able to give adequate care? Is that something that you think about, or are you thinking, I need to sell these animals, and maybe sometimes they'll go to a good home, sometimes they won't?
Yeah, well, that was the part I almost was dabbling into when I was producing so much, and that's the reason why I dialed back, because it was like, where are all of these going? I talk this, Mike Stefani's my mentor. We talk almost every day, and we say the same stuff. It's like you almost feel a level of guilt if you're producing something like that. I mean, the animal gets 8 foot when it's full grown. Like, where are all of these going? And I talk to a lot of my customers and stuff like that, but you can't talk to everybody. Not everybody wants to reach out. Some people I talk to at a show and I never see again. So I vet them when I can with the time that I have. But these days I can do a lot more of that than when I was producing that many. And that's a huge reason why I dialed back, because it was starting to eat at me morally. I'm not that guy that's in this for the money. Obviously, I think we pay more a month than comes in. That's for sure. So, yeah, it's definitely a big reason why I took a step towards more of the indicus and stuff like that. Because they're being brought in, and really, I mean, it sounds sad, but they're being brought in, and they're hitting a wall. They're not being produced. They're just being kept as pets, and then more have to come in. There's nobody really trying to really work with them that much. So that's my big emphasis going forward, is stuff like indicus and stuff that people have kind of been like, oh, you can't breed those in captivity. Because when I was a kid, with Melanus, Varanus melanus, the quince monitor, I remember clear as day walking around the shows and asking people, and they were like, no, you can't breed those in captivity. And I'm not the first. I think I'm the second or the third to breed them in the United States. But like, there's other people that have done, so they're able to be bred in captivity. It's just people didn't know how to keep it properly before. So that's the stuff I love focusing on, because it's a challenge. I'm the kind that's always chasing the challenge. So it's more fun for me.
S- uh, what state are you in?
I'm in Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
I grew
So
up in New Jersey, but I recently moved to Pennsylvania like the last 3 years because their laws are a lot more laxed than Jersey.
yeah. So how how are you keeping like that's a lot of animals, right? To keep indoors in an environment, like for me, it's like in my mind, I'm like, it would never be feasible to keep a black dragon indoors, in my house.
Mhm.
So how does that look? How does that facility look?
Well, it started off in my parents' house. They've moved since the first time I built the facility. Um, so I started off in their house, and I always want more. Like even with what I built, my dad and I are looking at buying a lot of land, and I want to build something that people can actually come to, kind of
Mm.
like a zoo kind of setup. My enclosures, my smallest enclosure is for the Indicus. It's 5 by 5, but my biggest for like shadow is 12 by 12. So 12
Jeez.
by 12 by 8. So I want to go bigger than that. I'd love to give him. I got a lot of my inspiration. Somebody I really looked up to as a kid was Ty Park. I've been down to Ty's probably 3, 4 times at least. And the way he has his rhino iguanas in like a 20 by 20 enclosure, that's the kind of future I'm looking for all my stuff. And it might actually end up hurting me productivity wise, but it'll make me feel a lot better. And I like watching my animals. I'm a guy that sits there on a rolling chair and just watches how they act and all that stuff. I think that has a lot to do with breeding, and breeding success is watching your animals. So I do that a lot. So that whole setup at my parents now, backtracking to that, is I have their whole basement. My parents have a ranch style house. I'd say the upstairs is probably about 3,500 square feet, something like that, 3,000 square feet long. So the basement's the same way. And
Wow.
then I have an outbuilding too. So it's hard to have two different places because you're running back and forth. So the next goal would be to just have one building with adjacent like sublets to it, like outside, where like I could keep smaller temperatures. So the main building would be like the big monitors, and then the outside connecting buildings would be like for agamids, stuff like that, with smaller, colder temperature.
Wow. Yeah, 12 by 12 is crazy. That's how big my snake room is.
Wow.
So I mean, a 12 by 12 cage is like,
Yeah, that's Shadow's gauge.
that's bananas, dude. Wow. Well, I mean, good for you. I mean, for now, so walk me through what he has, and this is kind of for my own benefit, right? Like my
Yep.
own planning, which I'd love to pick your brain on, outside of the podcast at some point.
Yeah.
But what size water basin do you recommend inside that enclosure? Like, what do you have for Shadow?
For Shadow, I have a 200-gallon tub. I would love. That's another. I mean, I could go on forever for my plans for the next place. But one of the big things is I want to give them like a swimming pool because they love to swim. It's a water monitor, so they love to swim. They spend a ton of time in the water, but it has to be realistic for me to be able to change, and my
Yeah.
wife to be able to help me change. And my wife is 6 months pregnant now, so
Congratulations.
thank you, thank you. That's like my wingman. She's the one that helps me. She's the one that convinced me to get back into the reptiles, honestly. So I'm in trouble without her right now. I'm doing kind of all this stuff by myself. So it's gotta be realistic for me to be able to change 30 tubs that big. And so in the future, it's gonna be a lot better. But he's like a 200-gallon tub right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so like if I was doing it outside in a 12 by 12 enclosure, would you recommend like 2/3 of that be pond? And
Yeah.
then,
Good.
wow, that's
But
so cool.
the water monitors are disgusting. They're known for being disgusting, and the enclosure will stay clean, but that water, they go to the bathroom in it, they live in it. It's pretty gross. So whatever you make your water, you got to be able to drain the entire thing and start over. Probably, if it's that big, probably at least once a week.
Wow.
Yeah, because
That's wild.
it gets gross. And my friend or my mentor, Mike Stefani, everything he has on turn valves. So he just drains everything out, turns the dial, fills everything up, which is how I'll do the next facility. But now I'm sumping everything. So especially the stuff in my parents' basement. It has to get sumped up and out of the house. So it's pretty difficult. But if you had turn valves where you could just open a valve, drain it, close it, fill it, oh, it's so easy.
Yeah, yeah.
Much easier.
And what about filtration? Is that even a possibility, or is it just it's not going to happen because there's just too much? They're just soiling it too quickly.
People that have tried, and I think you'd have to have something like zoo level or aquarium level. Everything that's accessible that you could buy online, I've tried it all, even with babies, and they clog so instantly it's not even worth it. I keep moving water. Like water has to move; it can't be stagnant. But filtration, it's almost impossible.
Wow. Yeah. And how fast do they grow? I mean, so how fast, if you were to get a baby, how quick would it need to be moved into an outdoor enclosure?
Without rushing, like feeding it normally, I'd say at a year and a half, you're looking at a 5-foot monitor.
That's nuts.
Yeah, they grow insanely fast. I have babies now that are not even 2 months old, and I'd say they're about that big, maybe like a foot and a half. They have periods, like they don't just like consistently grow. It's weird because they'll grow to like a certain point, and you'll be like, "What happened? Why aren't you growing?" And then in like a week, they hit like a spurt, and it's just like they take off. And that's just how they are, and it depends on feeding too. I know people that I seen somebody post the other day that they had a 1.5-year-old monitor, and it was like beyond breeding size. It was like 6.5 feet. And I'm like, it seems a little too fast. And I'm always nervous with that because of stuff I've had in the past. Is like, I feel like growing them slower is better than speeding them up because everything has time to adjust and move. I think if you grow something really fast, you're going to have a short-lived monitor, and they can live 20, 30 years. So I try to get as much time with them as I can.
Yeah, for sure. Especially when you're bonded to an animal like Shadow, yeah. Like it would be devastating to lose him because you grew him too quick, or, you know, like you were focused on breeding, which, you know, that's with me. Since I don't plan, if I ever get one, it's going to be a pet and a companion, you know, maybe used for, education, or, you know, bring it to my kid's school or something like that, you know? So it's like, in my mind, it's like the slower I grow them, the better, you know, so are they similar to snakes where you can stunt their growth if you do it too slow? Is that a thing? Or does it go in the other direction? Like, are they kind of like snakes where you'll notice that the body is bigger proportionally than the head if they grow too quickly?
I've seen a lot of things like that with monitors, but I think that's more of the lack of UVB. Like, I think a lot of it's MBD. I don't think you really stunt them. I just think they're not going to look filled out. They look like almost worse than the wilds, like the wild types where they're like really thin. But I've never seen anyone that looked like they were stunted. It's hard to say because I've always tried to feed them properly, but I've seen things like I got a black throat in a 1.5 years, 2 years ago, and the thing had a huge head. Its body was like really short, and then it had a long tail. And I'm like, I told the guy, I'm like, man, there's something going on with this thing. I honestly, either I'm gonna have to take it to the vet, or if I send it back to you, you take it to the vet. And it had MBD. I sent it back to him, and he took it to the vet, and it had MBD. And I think he still has it, but it just doesn't. It can't move. It doesn't have the same range of motions, and it was all like disproportionate. It looked like something out of a comic book, and it's sad.
Yeah. That's really sad.
Yeah.
And so that's interesting that you're saying that that UVB is important. So you actually you're giving them UVB, or are you supplementing D3 to get that into their diet?
Well, I give them, all my enclosures have power suns on them, so they get UVB directly from that, but they have T5s as well. I think about it like, I know a lot of people that don't use UVB, but if you think about it in the wild, I mean, this is something that basts a good amount of time, and they need that high temperatures at 140. So they're out there in the blazing sun. They're getting a ton of UVB, where like something like a ball python or something like that obviously doesn't need it because they spend all their time in burrows and stuff. But for monitors, it's definitely essential to have UVB. And I do give D3 too, especially to gravid females. They get a good amount of calcium.
Interesting. Yeah, and I mean, I get it. Being in Florida, I get that for free.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
my only
for
concern would
us,
be the
unfortunately. But
yeah. Do you have outdoor enclosures that you utilize during the summer or anything?
when I first moved to when my parents first moved to this farm, I made some outdoor enclosures and I tried. Um, it just I don't know, man. It's when you're doing enclosures inside your whole life, it's like it's a completely different way of thinking. And it wasn't feasible for me, and it didn't really make sense because I'm only getting maybe 2 or 3 months of realistic temperatures that they can use. So it just didn't make sense. So I just pulled everything back inside. And honestly, I wasn't really for the monitors. It was more for the cyclura, like the rhinos and stuff like that, because I think it's essential for them to be able to breed. I bred rhino iguanas by accident. I was, I guess, inside
Were you
once, and
cleaning the cage?
no, that one, I just keep them together, and they bred, and I noticed that she was big, and I just gave her a place to lay, and she laid, and I was able to produce them once, but I've had them for 5 years after that, and absolutely nothing. So I just got lucky one time. But
Interesting.
I think with them, they need that outdoor environment, and they need a huge space like Ty Park. Like I said, he has those massive enclosures where I think that's essential for cycler.
Next time you visit Ty Park or you're in the area, hit me up. I'm
Yeah,
25 minutes away from him.
really, that's
Yeah.
great. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Are you going to the IHS in June? I think it's IHS.
I don't think I'm going to make it, unfortunately. I just got back from Tinley, and we're trying to prepare for the kid on the way. And
Sure,
um,
sure.
I think I'm going to try to make it. I'm going to attempt to make it out to Monitor Fest in Chicago. They do that big thing at Brian Waterloo's house where all the monitor guys go.
That's awesome. So UV is a requirement in your mind, and you're doing that through the Power Suns and through T5 tubes.
Yep.
And so if I'm keeping outside, how am I going to get him in like how would you do it? How would you get him heat during the winter? Would you just have like a heated hide?
Yeah, I watch a lot of because I've never done it, so I watch a lot of guys like Camp Kennan and Jerry Wolf and stuff like
Sure.
that, and they just use hides where they can get out. But that's the biggest thing. I remember watching that one with Kennan where what's his Slinky?
Yeah.
He couldn't get in his hide box, and that terrifies me. I think I would have something where they can go inside like a shed or something where like I make sure they go in there at night and then I shut it. I wouldn't really leave it up to them because who knows what happens where they're not thinking about it or they have something else on their mind and they don't go into the hide box and end up not making it through the night. So
Yeah.
I would make it where it's up to me to be able to shut the door and not let them out until it's warm enough.
Do they dig?
Yes.
Okay,
If
so
they have a place to dig, they will dig until they'll dig to China. They don't.
really,
Yep.
wow.
They're
Yeah,
always
so that,
looking for an escape route. And unless they're like, I mean, Shadow, something that's been with me and been in his enclosure for so long, he knows like I'm in here until he opens the door. Um, but if you get something that's wild caught or something that's new to the area, they're going to check everything and anything to try to get out. And especially a female, they're always test digging to try to figure out where's the best place for them to lay. And that's most of their time is checking spaces to put their eggs.
if a customer comes to you and they are looking for a pet, black dragon, let's say, are you able to identify a baby that would fit that need better than other ones the way you identified Shadow? Do you see do those animals pop out to you and you're like, okay, this one is more laid back, more intelligent, more, less flighty, all that?
Yeah. With the black dragons, I have to say, and it's probably because of generations of them being bred, that they are more docile for me. But with other monitors, I could definitely see that. With my double hets that I just produced, I have one that was just out of the egg, came out, was crawling on me, never tried to bite, anything like that. And I'm like, I'm going to keep you back. And he never showed any aggression. He just has that demeanor. And I think that goes along with sex too. If it's a female, it seems like they're a lot more high strung. They're a lot more when they're older, they have a lot more issues because of them laying eggs, and you don't want them to get egg bound, and you have to have everything set up. And if you're not trying to breed, that's kind of a complication, because if you're not trying to breed, then you just have to have a lay box and stuff like that for them to lay for really just laying infertiles. But that could, if they don't lay those infertiles, they could obviously get them egg bound and they won't make it. So anybody that wants a pet, I'm always like, get a male. It's going to get a lot bigger, but it's going to be a lot more docile, and you don't have to deal with any egg laying or anything like that. So I always tell people to lean towards the male, and they might go through a teenage phase where they're like flighty and stuff like that. But once they hit that 2-year mark, it's kind of like a puppy to an adult dog. They seem to like dial back and become a lot more relaxed. But it's an age thing for sure.
Interesting. Okay. But there are some that really pop out to you. And it seems like, do you think that in your mind, do you think it helps that you've got an animal like Shadow that you're working with that is like, you're getting like he's passing on his awesome genes?
Yeah. At first, when I was younger, I was like, again, it's one of those things that kind of sounds crazy. It's like me passing on my personality or something like that to your kid. But I guess in a way you do. So it sounded crazy to me when I was younger, but yeah, I think it definitely helps having generational captive bred animals. They're used to us. They don't look at us as a threat. And I think that's instilled in them just like any other instinct. So I think that definitely helps. But they do definitely stand out. Like you could tell when an animal wants to come towards you or wants to run. And like I said, with the black dragons, they seem to be a lot more, I don't know, social, and they want to come towards you. Where I have stuff that's first generation, and they're like, get the hell away from me. Like I just produced beach throats, and they want nothing to do with you. They run, hide. They see you, they hide. So I think that's just because first generation.
So something I've noticed, or I did notice on your Instagram, is whenever you're holding Shadow, you don't seem to have any gloves on or anything. Is that just, does he not claw at you? Is he just that relaxed, or is that just a hazard that you've decided to take on?
It's a lot a hazard that I decided to take on. You listen to a lot of like the old school legends and stuff like that, like Crutchfield and stuff like that, and they call them whatever mittens. They call them. Yeah. They say you don't wear them because you're a baby or whatever. So I just never really wore them. But his nails are ridiculous. Like he's gouged me a lot of times, and it's just, I'll be outside and he'll see something and then just clench. And it's not like I'm doing anything. He's just not aware of his surroundings. But if you watch videos of me holding him, I'm never holding his neck or his head or anything like that. I'm never concerned of him turning and trying to bite me. He's never even attempted. So, and you can kind of tell it's just like anything else. You work with enough of them, you can kind of tell if that's even like a victim of their thought, like if that's even there. And his body never tenses. He never shows that aggression. Even if I'm not looking at him, if he's on me, I could tell what's going to happen with any monitor. And that's not, I don't want to sound like cocky or arrogant, but by saying it like that, but like if you work with enough of them, you can tell by their body language and how they're acting around you, what's going to happen next.
Sure.
Their body tells you everything.
I don't think that's cocky. I think that's, cattle farmers are the same way. They know what their cattle are going to do, because those are potentially dangerous animals. So, so that's, man, they're so cool. I want to get one so bad. I want to stop recording and impulse buy one right now.
It's funny because I have a clutch hatching right now, literally as we speak.
And they look so cool when they're babies. I mean, they look cool all the time. When they're big, they look like freaking, like the closest you could get to a Komodo dragon, I feel like, aside from maybe like a croc monitor or something, but I feel like are they a little bit more, are they a better pet option than a croc monitor?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's cool to see people captive breeding croc monitors, but I wouldn't recommend just somebody to jump in to get a monitor, to get a croc monitor. I feel like you have to have. I had croc monitors, and I was still like weary. I've never jumped out of an enclosure before besides a croc monitor enclosure. She charged me. I had a 7-8 foot minimum. She was huge, female, and she was temperamental. And one day I was in there and she didn't like what I was doing and she rushed me. And I was like, uh-oh. And I just dove out. I have little windows on purpose in the front of my enclosure because I don't want them to see me as a threat. So I have my windows. When I built all the enclosures, I didn't build a door that I could walk in. I put a window and I put it at top is like my chest level. So maybe like 5 foot. I'm 6'4", so it's maybe like at my chest level, and then I duck down and step into it. But I wanted them to always feel like I had to go down and get to below their level to be able to go in. But in that enclosure, the croc monitor was up here at like 7 feet, and she didn't like what I was doing and charged me, and I dove headfirst right out of that window. didn't even hesitate. And it might have been, she might have been, because they mock charge, they bluff, and it was just, she caught me off guard and scared the crap out of me, and I just dove out. But I've had tame ones too, so I don't want to say anything bad about croc monitors. It's a lot more of an animal than a water monitor, and a water monitor can be a lot more docile naturally, I think, than a croc monitor.
Yeah. All right. What about what are you giving as far as supplements? Like how do you supplement your monitors?
We use carnivore care, and I use calcium. That's really most of what we give. They get a lot with carnivore care, and I do that. I do carnivore care once a week, and I do calcium every other week. It depends. With the females, I might do it more than that, but I've heard horror stories of over giving supplements too. Mm-hmm. So I try to keep that in mind and not go crazy with it.
So are you doing that like once a week?
Yeah. I do carnivore care once a week. I do calcium every other week. If the female just laid, I'll give her calcium right away, maybe for the next couple feeds, just to build that back up, because they lose a lot when they lay, especially when they're laying 30 eggs. So I do that right away, but I try not to give too much calcium, because I've heard, like I said, horror stories of people getting a lot of problems because they give a lot of calcium, especially with D3. So.
All right. And how are you getting the supplement to them? Are you putting it in the feeder, or
like I tried the whole injecting into the feeder thing, and my wife's a nurse, so she can bring syringes. You can't just easily get syringes. So like she'll explain, she runs 3 hospitals. So she'll bring syringes and I'll use those. But that became more of a hassle than it's worth. So I just kind of put it on the quail eggs, and they get it the same way either way.
Okay.
It was just a lot cleaner and easier to put it in the rodent and give it to them. With the eggs, they kind of make a mess, and it works the same way.
Okay. And so those are just raw eggs, and how many eggs are you giving them?
We actually do scrambled, because if you do raw, you're going to have egg yolk everywhere. So we scramble the eggs, and we give them, depending on the size, they probably get like 3 or 4 eggs.
Okay. So when you're scrambling those up, you're just mixing in the supplements with it?
Yeah.
Okay. That's easy. And so if I had a male black dragon as a pet, what if, and like breeding wasn't a thing, and I wanted to keep them at a healthy weight, would you recommend doing still the 3 meals a week, but smaller meals? Or could you possibly do 2 meals, or is that not enough then in your mind?
It's really preference. I know people that feed every day, but they do like a quail or 2 every day. And quail are a very light prey item where they can process it very fast, where a rodent is very fatty, so it takes a while. Like rodents, bunnies, stuff like that, I try to stay away from the bunnies because I don't like feeding bunnies. But yeah.
I breed rabbits. I feel you.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. You could feed every day if you wanted to. You feed every other day. 3 times a day, just 3 times a week, just worked for us better. And I just watch their intake. Like sometimes, like I'll feed heavy with like one of my nucalus or something like that, and then they'll start looking heavy, where like their lateral lines, like you see no folds on their body, and they start looking like really plump. And I'm like, all right, we might need to skip 1 or 2 here, and that's totally fine, because in the wild they're not on the schedule. They're not like, all right, it's my monitors know it's feeding day, but in the wild they're not going around like, all right, it's Tuesday, time to eat. So it's okay to skip one once in a while. I think it helps them and it keeps them more on their toes. So when that food comes around, they're ready to go.
Is that the dangerous time? Is that the most dangerous time to interact with them is on feeding day?
Definitely. Like my new college, they know it's feeding day. They know I'm in the building and they're waiting at the door. If I went in there without food, I'm going to feel it. And that's just with that species. I don't want to say it like monitors are like, they're trained to know like, oh, it's feeding day. I'm going to go after you. It's just that species is a very aggressive, high strung species. And every one of them is like that. I have 5 of them and they all know when it's feeding time. They're so smart that I carry all my feeders in buckets. I have these big metal buckets that I carry around just to thaw them out and keep them in water while I'm feeding. And when the handle comes down and hits the bucket, they hear it and they all light up. They know that it's feeding time just from that one noise.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, it's I can't imagine the intensity. I mean, I know it like with my Argentine boa, she's in shed right now and she didn't get fed, but she came out of her hide and just stared at me as I was moving around the room and I was like, please don't smash your face into the glass, because it's I was surprised how keyed up she was just because I was feeding everything else in the room and she caught that scent and knew what was up.
Yep.
So have you taken any bites?
Just little ones. I always say to my wife and she laughs, or I say to anybody really, my worst fear is getting bit. And it sounds ridiculous with what I do, but when you see what they do to other things, you don't want that to be you. So I'm very, very cautious. And when you deal with monitors and you're jumping over, stepping over, you're in there with them, hands on all the time. I feel like your reactions are heightened. So I'm quick to move all the time. And it's funny because I was with my brother the other day. My brother came over and was just watching them. And I was like, you want to see something funny? And I have them all trained. They're that smart. So like when they know it's feeding time, some of them are a little more pushy than others, but a lot of them will sit in the back all the way at 7 feet high, basking. And I'll have a rodent and I was like, watch. And I took the tongs and I tossed it and in midair, it just grabbed it. So
wow.
I'm not hands on where I'm like right in their face. So I try to keep my distance is the best what I'm trying to say. And with a lot of the monitors, it's not a problem. They know the difference between food and your hand. But you get some of those wild, crazy ones that get too excited and they'll get you. But all the bites I've taken in the past for all little stuff. I've never taken anything where like it was drastic. I only took one bite in my life that I needed stitches, and it was actually a green iguana. So with all the crazy stuff I work with, the worst bite I took was a green iguana. So.
Yeah, I saw some stupid kid on social media like let a wild green iguana latch onto his arm.
Yeah, I saw that.
And it's like, God.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that person's out there like driving a car and stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
The thing is you look at a green iguana, you're like, how bad could it hurt? Oh my God. It's not teeth like a monitor. They're just serrated jaws. So, I mean, it got me through a bag. It was an order that I took in when I was a kid and I couldn't get it off. I was yelling to my dad, he had to come get it off, but I needed like 50 stitches. And
so that was at the pet store you worked at?
It was actually at my house. I just got a coral albino. It was my first coral albino one.
Okay.
And it was so bad that I honestly sent it back to the person. I couldn't even get out of the bag. I didn't even have a chance. But yeah, that was the worst. So I think that says something for monitors that like of all the years I've been keeping giant monitors that are bigger than me, my worst bite was in either of the monitors.
Damn. So kind of like what was your experiences that made you want to get into this, like as deep into it as you're in? And it sounds like you want to go even further into it, right?
Yeah. I've always loved animals, and my whole career path when I went to college and high school was I was going to be a vet. And, that really didn't check off after learning more about it and it really didn't check off what I wanted to do. I didn't really want to operate on animals. I wanted to spend time with animals. So um, really, I wanted to own a zoo. So this is like the closest thing to owning a zoo, I guess.
Sure.
Being able to operate at my own pace instead of listening to other people. Because most zoos, it's not even people that are hands-on. You got to listen to the curators and then above them and all that stuff. So this really is like having my own personal zoo, but I'm kind of in charge. So.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Like every one of my enclosures, I design them to look cool. I want people to see them and say like, "Oh man, that's awesome," and try to see the natural behavior of the animal. So I definitely I get that. Like I don't like keeping stuff in racks and tubs just because that's not how I get any enjoyment out of an animal. My enjoyment is from watching them, observing their behavior, and then having somebody come over the house and be like, "Oh, this is not what I anticipated somebody that keeps snakes to be doing."
Yeah.
Like it's super clean and it looks cool,
Yeah.
So like, how do you plan on having a facility that's going to be open to the public one day? And how are you planning to move towards that? Are you going to have like an agriculture, like piece of property, something that the public can come to and visit?
Yeah, that's that's my biggest goal with all of this is to have that. And I think the biggest part of it is just financially. I mean, it's a huge undertaking. Just to even build the facility I have now, to put a number on it, and I mean, it's just a normal basement and outbuilding. I mean, it was close to $100,000 instead of our place, and I'm still trying to work my way out of that. Um, I'm breeding to try to pay off what I did, and then that's kind of a lot of my personality is I'll finish something and I'm already looking at the next thing. So as soon as I did that, I'm like, I want more, and I want to continue to breed, but I want people to enjoy them the way I enjoy them. And just to give you like kind of an idea of where I'm thinking, like I always pictured an enclosure like ties. It's like 20 or 20 by 30. And I wouldn't have people walking through there, but unless you were like a responsible keeper or somebody I really knew, but I want to be able to walk underneath trees with croc monitors sitting on branches. Like you'd be in the wild, like you're in Indo walking through this enclosure and you're looking up at these croc monitors. That's like the direction I'm trying to head, which is obviously very expensive. But I guess the best thing to relate that to is like Reptilandia down in Texas, like what Ari did with all those croc monitors and all that stuff. That's the direction I'm trying to head with all of it. But I want to still keep a breeding facility. I don't think it's going to be like open to the public like a zoo like Reptilandia is, like public every day. But it would be accessible to the public. I think I would keep it as a breeding facility, and then maybe a couple of days out of the month be like, all right, we're open today. Anybody wants to come by, or somebody send me a message on Facebook or Instagram and was like, hey man, I'm in the area. Can I swing by? I'd be like, of course. Which I really can't do now because I mean, it's my parents' house. So I don't want to parade people through my parents' house. So that's the goal eventually, is to have something that's just like full blown trees in their enclosure and absolutely mind blowing. Like I want you to look and be like, wow, that's Indonesia, or wow, that's the Philippines. And that's where I'm headed, because it's good for me, it's good for the animals, and it's good for people to see something like that.
So how do you do that do you plan on leaving the state and going further south to where you can do outdoor enclosures with actual trees? Or are you thinking about doing a facility with a really high ceiling to where you can actually put like trees in the ground and have like an indoor kind of greenhouse?
Well, I say trees, but I'm gonna basically build them out of cement, like Ari did. Like it's gonna look like a tree with a branch, and it's gonna be not real. Because I feel like there's a lot behind just keeping plants and all that stuff alive, and I've never been the best at that. So if everything is like stationary, and then you could obviously have live plants in there, but to have real trees is a lot harder. And when I was a kid, I always thought like I was going to move to Florida, especially with having all the animals. I'm like, man, that is a dream to be able to just keep outside and all that stuff. But as I got older, I think I realized that that's harder than it looks. And I give you guys kudos for being able to do that, because there's a lot of variables that you have to deal with outside that we really have locked in and controlled. Like we are the variable, where you guys have to deal with nature, as you can't control nature. It's going to do what it does. So I don't mind keeping inside. It's just, like I said, it's very finite. The initial investment is a lot more because you have to put up a building and build the enclosures and build these giant trees and all this stuff. So it's a lot more expensive, but once you get that underway, it's under your control, which I think is necessary for breeding monitors and stuff like that. You need to be able to drop temps and raise temps and all that stuff when it's necessary.
Yeah, I mean, the thought of that is, it would be pretty epic. I mean, if you could have, basically indoor ponds that are all plumbed to pump out and, automatically fill based on float, with float switches, and man, that would just be epic. And like, would you do like,
it sounds like a dream. Like, I don't know. Like, even when I talk about it again, like the other thing, you're like, wow, that sounds crazy, but I'm very hands-on. I've built houses. My main job is my dad flips houses, so I'm the one that works on them, and I've done all this stuff before. So it's going to be me doing it, and it's going to take a lot longer than your average person with a construction crew. But me and a couple of friends, it wouldn't be that bad, and it's all something that I can do myself. So I would do all the plumbing, all the gradient floors, because I want to have all heated floors. Like I said, I could go on forever. I've thought about this for way too long. That like when financially I'm ready, I'm going to be ready and planned with blueprints the day we open. Open.
That's awesome. Would you have like a misting system in there so it could like just spray down the enclosures on an interval?
Yeah, everything would be drained. And the way, again, it's funny because Ty was my first person that I looked up to, but I still implement a lot of stuff from the first time I went there. He had just regular piping that he drilled like little pencil holes into. So he could turn a valve and it would spray out of those pencil holes, and then he'd just close the valve again. Instead of having to deal with like these massive Mist King kind of systems, it was so simple, but it worked so well. And nowadays you could even use like a PVC or like a blanket, like the PEX piping, and just put little holes. It's all plastic, and put little holes, and it would like stay better longer, and it wouldn't clog up as easy. So I would implement something like that, and you could even put something like that on a timer where it had like a gate that opened. They make so much stuff these days. Everything you could think of, I'm sure you could find somewhere. I learned that with the whole display that I just built for Finley. There's so much electronics and stuff that they make now that makes your life so much easier.
Yeah, it's that's actually what I plan on doing. I mean, just cruising around on Amazon, I plan on keeping diamond pythons outdoors, and I know that the summer heat is going to be a lot. I mean, we don't, surprisingly, we don't get that hot outside in Florida. Like, it's pretty rare that we get over 100, so it's usually low to mid 90s is going to be your max outdoor temperature during the summer. And I've thought to combat that heat and cool the snakes down, I would put in a misting system, and you can find these misting hoses with nozzles, and it's like a 50 pack of nozzles and all the hose, and you just run it to your spigot on the side of your house. And then you can put a Wi-Fi programmable timer valve on there and set it to turn on, whatever you want, every hour for 5 minutes.
See, I never even knew that. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's so cool. So basically the spigot's always open, and then you have this automated valve on there, and it just spins, opens up, mists the entire enclosure, and then closes as often as you want it.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so stuff like that. I love geeking out about that kind of stuff, and especially keeping diamond pythons outdoors. And, we just, and you talking about your facility, we just went and visited Dr. Stephen Tillis in Archer, Florida, and he's got tons of animals, right? And going through and seeing everything that he has, and then talking to him about it. And I was talking about snake diseases, and he said like keeping them indoors is less than ideal. If you have them outside in the sun, like they would experience in Australia, it's going to be, their immune system is going to be functioning at 100%, You know, it's going to be so much better than keeping them in a black box, you know, a black box with a little bit of lighting that is just scratching the surface of what the sun gives, you know.
That's crazy you say that, because like, I don't know, it went from, I feel like keeping was like, oh, you can keep anything at, when I was younger, at like ambient temperatures, you don't have to get over 100, and then it went from that to like, okay, you gotta scorch everything. Everything needs to be super hot. They're cold blooded, and then now it's like a happy medium where you're starting to realize that things can handle colder temperatures, but it has to be reasonable. And that's what I think triggered my quints to breed, because they were something, like I said, that people said to me, there's no way you're breeding those. And then I'm that kind of person where somebody tells me you can't, then I'm going to put all my time in and try to figure it out. And
hell yeah,
with them, I really did. And I dropped them almost down to like 65. And I was very, very nervous to do that because that's unorthodox for a monitor. And then when I brought them up, it wasn't a long period of time. I brought them up. I mean, they started breeding right away. And
wow.
I think that's kind of more normal. In the wild, it's not scorching 90 degrees all the time, especially where they're from. It drops down. You have rainy season, stuff like that. And they're able to handle that in moderation. They can't live like that, but they can handle it for a while. It's the same with the shinnies. I mean, they got down to 50, 55 and come back up and they're fine. So I think there's a lot more research being done and implemented these days into like actual weather in their area. And I think it's beneficial for them for sure. Like you said.
Yeah. It's, I mean, just my snakes, the way I've, you know, initially I was keeping them with heat projectors. So they had heat available all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, I talked to a lot of people. I talked to Lucas Lee, people that are like, you know, the sun goes down and generally it cools off in nature. It's not 90 degrees all night and all day. Right.
Yep.
And so I switched over to overhead bulbs, and I know not everybody can do this. And I'm not saying that everybody should do this, but it's the way I want to do it because I'm trying to replicate nature. Right.
Yep.
So they get a sunny basking spot that might be 100 degrees. If the ambient temperature in my room is 81, you know, like it might get to be 81, 82 degrees in here. But then at night it's going to go down to 72. And I think, like you just said, not picking one or the other, but giving them both, you know, give them time to cool down, give them time to heat up. When my boas are in shed, they're sitting at like 102 degrees, you know, all day long basking. And that's their choice. They could go 6 feet in the other direction and go down to like 78 degrees in the cool spot.
Yeah. When I first started grading monitors, people were like, I was under the impression like 100 degrees was a lot. And I don't know, this might have been like 7 years ago sometime, right when I got shadow. And I was like, okay, that's good enough. And then I was talking to somebody, it might even have been Mike. And he was like, nephew, you got to put that at like 140. I'm like, 140? I'm like, you're going to cook them. And that's what every monitor I have has the opportunity to get to is 140 degrees. And they use it. They love it. And they just sit there like it's us sitting outside. Like you wouldn't, they're not even phased. Where if I put my hand there, it'd probably burn. But they love it. And then that's the biggest thing with monitors is you have to give them a gradient. So like they have that 140 at optimal top of the enclosure at 7 foot, but at the bottom it's like 75. So they can go from that, and you'll see them like Shadow will be basking all day, and by 6 o'clock he's on the ground laying completely sprawled out. Like, all right, I've had enough of the heat. Let's turn these lights off. So they definitely use every bit of it, and I that's another thing that I was told when I was younger is like, oh, you can't have enclosures that go all the way to the floor, and every one of my enclosures is 8 foot. It goes from floor to ceiling. Because they like, and my whole building is cement. So they like to get to that cool spot once in a while and cool down. And that's from Woodard monitor to Indicus across the board. So I think that's essential with some of the success that I've had.
Yeah, I feel like after I just had some PVC cages built, and instead of going 4x2x4 or 2x, it's 2 deep, 4 long, and 2.5 high. Mm-hmm. And just that extra 1/2 foot high, I got so much more vertical gradient.
Yep.
Which I find to be so much more valuable than the horizontal gradient going from a heated side to a cool side. It's wild how much, like it gets way hotter up at the top, and then it's the animal's choice. What do you want? Did you just eat a big rat and you want to go up and get as hot as possible? Go for it. And if you want to cool down, and some animals, some animals like to be hotter, some like to be cooler.
Yep, definitely. It's crazy because like in the building, like if I'm working on something up on the ladder and I'm at like ceiling level, I'm like, oh my God, I can't even breathe. I'm like pouring sweat. It's like ridiculous because it all obviously goes up. But at the floor, you're totally comfortable. And then you're like, wow, the gradient I have to say, if I did anything good by accident, it's the gradient in that building. It's like perfect for monitors. That's what kind of scares me with moving, is like, especially with going with 15-foot tall enclosures like I want to for croc monitors and stuff like that. Am I going to achieve those same gradients without breaking the bank and trying to heat a 15-foot tall building? Those are things that I think are complications I'm going to run into. But let's hope they're easily fixable. And fans or something like that can help me out, but we'll figure it out when the time comes.
Well, how do you plan on kind of combating the costs? I mean, do you try to focus on, okay, what is rare, what's not being bred, what's going to be a high dollar item or animal rather, what's going to be a high dollar animal, but also benefit the hobby, and then additionally, pay the bills so you can operate at a higher level? Like, how do you find that balance? Is that kind of what you're looking for?
That was kind of what I'm looking for. But for the longest time, it was like, I just want to breed monitors. And then when I got Shadow, I had no intentions on trying to breed him. I never thought I could. Basically, because when I started, it was kind of like when the upcoming of breeding monitors was still happening. So like there wasn't a lot of breeders out there. There was like, I remember Kevin McCurley, Mike. There was like the big guys that were breeding, but weren't really. I can't say Mike because Mike has shared everything with me. He's told me everything. But a lot of the big guys, other than Mike, they don't want to share secrets with you. They don't want to tell you, because then you become competition. Which it seems to be a thing in the past now. I feel like a lot more people are open about it. But when I got Shadow, I had no intentions on breeding. So I got a female. I saw him doing courting behaviors with a normal female that I had. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try to find a black dragon female. And within a couple of weeks, he was breeding. And I was mind blown. I'm like, I can't believe he's actually doing this. So it was a lot of trial and error before I actually got viable eggs. But it happened. And water monitors were where the passion started. But it seems like a lot of people are doing them now. And any monitor breeding is hard. It's not something that you can, and nothing against ball python guys. I love ball pythons, geckos, everything, but it's not, keeping monitors and breeding monitors is not something that you can go to the store and buy a rack. You can't do this. You have to give them everything that they would have in the wild. And there's a lot of steps to it. I mean, unfortunately, I'm jumping all over the place, but unfortunately yesterday I had a clutch of eggs. They went 180 days and they were albinos. It was my first albino clutch, and they never made it out of the egg. So I put in all the work all the time. You have 8 months, 9 months of work there, and then they don't even make it out of the egg. So it's something that it's not easily done, but water monitors, I would say, is the easiest of the genius to breed. So I'm trying to gravitate more towards what people aren't focusing on. It might not be cost effective right now. And that's not really what I'm looking at. I'm looking at what the hobby needs. And like, you see all these peach throats, all these melanus, all this mangroves, all these indicas coming in every year, and nobody's really breeding them. Nobody's really trying. And the people that are having a lot of complications. So I'm doing everything I can to try to breed those. And I think eventually, once you it's kind of like a long-term project. I think once you put a lot of emphasis on them and people realize that they are such a cool monitor and there's so much variability there, and they only get 3 foot, 4 foot. Really, anybody can keep them. And it's like having the hottest thing now is like green trees, blue trees, yellow trees. and everybody's getting a lot of money for those. But they have the kind of wiry tendency where these indicus, these bigger indicus like Melanus and peach throat, it's like a happy medium. You have that tree arboreal personality where they'll come out, jump on you, but they're a lot more, I feel like, personable and a lot more like intelligent in the way like a water monitor is. So I feel like you're getting the best of both worlds. And I mean, those peach throats, even the ones I just hatched, are just mind blowing. You have something that's red, pink, orange, yellow, green, and blue. You have the rainbow from the top to the bottom on a monitor. And it's just like, wow. I don't know if it gets cooler than that. So, and the thing with a lot of those indicus is like, especially the quints, like they act like Mertens where their last resort is to turn and bite you. They don't want to bite. They don't want to exert that energy to try to bite you. They just want to get away. And if they don't want to get away, then they're definitely not going to bite you. And even my adults, my Melanus, they have no fear of me. They don't want to bite me. And I think people would enjoy something like that at that size, that 3.5, 4 foot, instead of these 7, 8 foot monitors that a lot of people think are going to, like, everybody was preaching for the longest time with the black dragons that there was this Komani that was lingering around that only stayed about 4 or 5 feet. It's bull. There's no 4 or 5 foot black dragon. Not in the States anyway. I can't say in Indo and other countries that they haven't gotten that far because they're way ahead of us. They're in that environment. They can produce these monitors that stay smaller and could be melanistic. We don't have that here in the States. Every black dragon you see is a female going to get 5.5 feet. Every male is going to get 7, 8 foot.
Wow.
So they tried to, I don't know who it was, but somebody was trying to pass off this Komani smaller locality of black dragon, which isn't true. So you all these people that think that they were buying a black dragon and it's going to stay that small probably now have a 7, 8 foot monitor. And it's not easily done for a lot of people. And I know from doing it. I mean, he's huge. He's bigger than my dogs. I have masters and he's bigger than them. So it's a lot. So and a 3 or 4 foot monitor is a lot more doable for your average person.
Is Komani is that a locality?
I think it's something that Crutchfield played a part of discovering. I think there is a smaller locality or breed or something, but it's just not something we have here. I think he was talking about that when he was in Thailand, and somebody just took that and ran with it, and it's like, oh, I have Komanis, when it's not. There's no. I've talked to so many people, and they're like, no, there's no Komanis.
The peach throats, are they like what size enclosure are you looking at for them? What would be ideal?
My breeding pair is in a 6'6" by 8.
Okay.
I mean, that's a breeding pair. My female is maybe 3 feet. She's probably smaller than that, and she's like 4 years old. My male is a huge male, and he's like a little over 4 foot.
And you're getting the same kind of personality and everything, but just in a smaller package.
Yep, same personality. The best representation of that is the quince monitor. They act just like a water monitor, but they'll climb where a water monitor will climb, but not like them. They'll scale a tree like a tree monitor. But they have that same exact personality, and they like the water too. So if I were to tell anybody that if you didn't want a water monitor, and I'm disregarding a lot of things with the water monitors. There's Sumbawas, there's Nucalis, the Togianus. There's a lot of subspecies that stay small in that 3 or 4 foot range, but you get a lot more personality and different behaviors with a indicus that you don't get with a water monitor. But these days there's a lot of different options, and I'm not completely giving up on water monitors. I don't want to make it sound like that. I'm always going to produce black dragons until the day I get out of the hobby. Just not at the volume I was, because that's where my passion started, and it never left. And God forbid, the day Shadow's gone, I want to still continue that bloodline, because he's just a prime example of what the species should be. And there's a lot with black dragons I could dive into too, of why I want to continue that bloodline. But
yeah, please do. Why do you want to continue?
There's a big thing with black dragons where people were crossing black dragons for a while and getting different. If you look at a baby and it has a ton, I mean, every baby black dragon, people think that they just come out solid black. They do come out solid black, but there's a 2-week period after that where they get banding, like subtle banding, not like solid bands where you could see it, but it looks like a water monitor if you painted over it with like watercolor. Like you can see the banding coming through. And I think that's something to do with like how they stay incognito in the wild. I mean, that's what patterning's for, is to try to distract predators, or you not just to see their figure when they're in the weeds. So I think they developed that pattern just to kind of help them blend in for a little while. But they eventually do lose that patterning completely. And I have holdbacks that I could see that. But there is people out there, just like anything else, that are trying to pass these hybrids that aren't pure black dragons, and they're selling them on the market. And you can see solid banding on their backs, their tail, everything. And I feel like that's misleading people, and they're not getting a black dragon. I call them a brown dragon because they're not solid black. And I want to continue the bloodlines that I have, because my female is actually an import, and my male is just jet black from head to tail. And a lot of people come to me for that reason, because that's something I promote and I push with my bloodline. Like, you're getting a black dragon here. You're not going to get something that turns brown on you or turns into a patterned monitor. You're getting what you paid for. And honestly, you're getting what you wanted, not what you paid for, because I'm probably one of the lowest priced out of everybody else.
And so now with producing less black dragons and everything, are you that gives you the time to kind of vet and figure out, like, all right, where is this animal going? What's the care going to look like? Do they know what they're getting into? Right. I mean, it's like, I think that often about like people that breed mainland retics, like where is that animal going? You know, where is it going to be there long term, or are they going to realize within a year and a half or 2 years that they made a mistake?
Yep. And that's definitely true with that. Is instead of having, I had 60 at one time, I think 60 black dragons. So multiple clutches that have, and I'm trying to place them where I want to. It's just not doable, especially if you have other clutches on top of that. So with the 20 that hatch at a time, like this clutch is about to hatch now, it's about 20. I can really vet people. And I have people like yourself that were like, I've always wanted a black dragon. It's the only monitor I want. And they've done their research already. And then they come to me and just ask a couple more questions. And I could tell they've already been there and done that and looked them up and talked to people. That's most of my customers, I would say. Like they've already, there's not much to vet because they've already done all of that. And I tell them, like, by a year old, you're going to go through like 3 or 4 enclosures. They grow fast and they outgrow enclosures very fast. And you can't put a baby in an 8-foot enclosure. So you need to have middle grounds there. But that's something that they understand already most of the time. Very, very rarely people come to me and they're like, I want a black dragon, but know nothing, which is cool. You wouldn't expect that, but I think anybody that really wants a black dragon does enough research to realize that they get 8 feet. And they're like, wow, I got to do some more research than this if I'm just going to get this.
Yeah, it's not an impulse buy animal.
No, definitely not. I've never sold it. I never really had. I've had 1 or 2 here and there. I can't say never, but people don't come up to me and like, I just want this. They know what it is first, most of the time.
Did you see that the news story where the water monitor was walking around out in the neighborhood? Yeah,
I did.
That's my neighborhood.
Is it really?
That's the city I live in.
No way. That's crazy.
Yeah. So yeah, it's I'm in my mind I'm like, that probably was an impulse buy. That, or somebody loves that animal and it dug out of its enclosure, or something happened there. It looked like a very well-fed animal. That being said, I'm sure that they're fantastic hunters and there's plenty of rabbits around here. But yeah, that sort of stuff scares me too, right? Living in Florida, it's like, what if more people let them out and then we can't, keep them anymore? I mean, I'm assuming that FWC would have something where I'd get grandfathered in, but I think, and my neighbor is he's a real piece of work. So I'm thinking about building a snake building. I'm on a 1/2 acre. So having a 38-foot long by 14-foot wide snake building / podcast studio. And then what I want to do is do big privacy fence around the back of it. And in there, I can have all my outdoor enclosures and know that it's going to be like very far away from him, like at minimum 160 to 180 feet away from his house. And I'll have a barricade fence around, you know, maybe 8 feet tall or something. That way I know that they're going to be out of view of anybody. I don't want anybody in my business, you know?
And that's definitely, I think, essential with monitors, because people that aren't in the community, people that don't understand, you see something of that size and you're like, oh my God, people can have that. And that's where things go bad. So I never have taken any of my adults out before. And I took Shadow to a show out here when I had a ton of babies, and I'm big with the shows. I always like really showing out and really showing off, like, here's the babies, here's the adults. I want people to know what they're getting into. It's the same thing as everything else that I say. So I had the babies there, and I had Shadow and Enclosure, and people were freaking out. And I'm like, this might not be a good thing. I don't care about sales, but it's like you're putting something in those people's vision of like, oh my God, people actually have this in their house. And I don't know if that's a good thing sometimes. Some people, if you're researching and you know and you understand the hobby and you want that, that's great. But to put that in people's view, you're like, they're going to see it on social media and stuff anyway. But sometimes in person, it's different. And I could see people's all day. I was watching people's reactions, and they were freaking to see an 8-foot monitor sitting there. But
yeah,
he wasn't a big fan. I don't think I'll ever bring him again. In my shows out here, I like to bring adults just so people know what they're getting. But he was not a fan, and I don't think I'll ever take him out again for that. He's not. Yeah, I think with me, he doesn't like to see that many people. He was getting stressed out.
Yeah, but I mean, it was probably good for people. You know, what if somebody walked up and they were like, "Oh, a tiny little black lizard. You know, I'd love to have one of these," and then they look over and it's like, "Oh, maybe not." You know?
Yeah. No, I think that's cool. I don't, and people do that all the time. Like if they keep like collodies or something small, like, oh, here's the babies and here's my breeder pair. I even see people do it with leeches and stuff like that. But you can't really do that with a monitor easily. So funny enough, I drove with my wife to Vermont, and we picked up, those like curved deli displays that you like go into a deli to have all the cupcakes and stuff in. Mm-hmm. I bought one of those and I built it out because the glass is really thick, and that's what I put my adults in when I go to a show, and then all the babies are on the middle table. So it's cool. It's definitely it's an idea that I always wanted to do, and it's a lot of work, but it's cool to let people see that, because you don't see adults at a show very often.
Yeah, it makes me wonder, like, building a cage outdoors. I would probably need to have somebody come in with a little backhoe or something and like dig down and then put concrete block, like maybe 1.5 feet down and up.
I was going to say that. I was definitely going to say that, but I feel like, I don't know. I mean, you tell me, with your laws down there, I think you have to, right? You have to do concrete underneath all your enclosures.
I don't know if it's required right now, but I would probably go down and put like some kind of mesh, some sort of, something that he wouldn't be able to dig through, and then maybe do like 1 foot or 1.5 feet of soil over that, and then do a pond with a really thick pond liner and maybe even double it up. Yep. But yeah, it would be a lot. It would be a big undertaking for sure.
Definitely. And biggest thing I always tell people with monitors, if there's a way out, they're going to find it. You might not see it, but they're going to find it. And in my building, they can't get out. But I've had escapees. So like, that's what I'm always worried about, is like, you got to make sure every corner is checked and every panel is secure and stuff like that. Because monitors, they're all like Houdini. They're going to find that gap and get out.
Yeah.
I actually have a Houdini because he's likes to break out of his cage. So
that's his name. Yeah, it's
sports monitor, Varanus obor, which is another very rare species that we're trying to work with.
Nice. Yeah. That's so cool that you're working with so many rare things. And like looking at the comments for when that water monitor was roaming around the neighborhood, everybody's like 45 would fix this problem, and so it's like, then I get like legitimately scared. Like, man, if I keep this animal and he gets out, people are going to want to kill it. They will kill it. Like that's the go-to solution where I'm at, is that if it's out, they're going to kill it no matter how it's behaving.
Yeah.
And how monitors are, and a lot of those big lizards, they might come towards a person because they're expecting food.
Yep. Yeah, it's definitely a huge fear. And that's what I thought about when I started keeping the cycler outside. And they're diggers, but they're not like ones that are going to try to like break out like a monitor would. So that was a fear that I wasn't really adjusted for, and that's why I brought everything back inside, because it's like I said, it's like a totally different world to keep outside. I give you guys so much credit for doing it, because I don't even know where to start. So that's why I just brought them back in. I was too afraid of them getting out and wandering the neighborhood. I actually had sulcatas dig out once, and they only made it like 100 yards, but I was scared out of my mind when I walked in that enclosure. I didn't see them. I'm like, oh, great. Now they're going to be calling fish and game. People are going to be like, oh, these sulcata tortoises are roaming around. And thank God I just found them quick.
Yeah, they are masters of escape during, especially during breeding season, for sure. That is something you see all the time on the local Facebook groups, is we found this tortoise and we're turning it over. And it's constant. It's a constant thing. Yeah. And there's a lot of people in the area that keep them. And it's like, once breeding season comes, they're out, they'll find a way to get out for sure.
Yeah. It's amazing how they dig to build a nest or whatever. Those huge caverns. It's crazy.
Yeah. Not a good pet. Not a good pet. So speaking of kind of rare stuff, I'd like to talk about the Borneo earless monitors. Well, actually, before we get into that, you mentioned before trial and error, and having to try a lot to get viable eggs with the water monitors. What were some of the trials and errors that you experienced and went through to get to a point where you are now successfully breeding them?
The biggest is laying. I feel like the biggest I still talk to people that struggle with it. Some people take it and they run with it, and some people they don't. But temperature is huge. Temperature is everything. That 86 degrees is what they're looking for, and they'll lay there every single time. So I struggled a lot with laying, because I was one that didn't listen at first. And I was like, if they have proper laying, they'll lay. It doesn't really matter. But that 86 degrees is essential. So every lay box that we have is heated, and one side is 86 degrees, and just like their temperature in their enclosure, it gradients down. So they could choose where they want to lay. But I've never had a monitor lay anywhere but right on that heat pad. And even with that, when you're checking, I didn't have cameras back then. I have cameras now, and I have these things that are like sliding lay boxes. So there's a encased box, and then there's a box inside of it that actually slides out. So when the female's out of the lay box, she has no idea that I pulled out her entire lay box. And I can look for eggs without her even knowing. That was huge, I think. And that's something I'll implement even more in the next place. I'll just make it bigger, because it is very complicated to move 500, 600, 700 pounds in soil. But the caster system that I have them all on caster dollies, so you can wheel them in there, and they just see the outside box. They don't see the inside box moving in and out like a draw. So that was huge with getting eggs. And just the cameras, I think, were huge too. I could see when they laid. I could see when they're deflated. I don't need to have, because when they're about to lay, they want no interaction. They'll hold their eggs if they think you're bothering them, because obviously they want their eggs to succeed and hatch. So they're not going to do it with you around. So those were the couple of things that I think really changed the breeding dynamics over here.
That's awesome. So you're just basically watching them when they go in there and they lay, then it's go time.
Yeah, I can look right now on my phone and see every female enclosure and see what they're doing.
How many female enclosures are there?
I have, 12 that have cameras on them. And then I have a bunch of other ones that are paired that don't have cameras. But I have 12 of the main breeder enclosures.
And how deep is the substrate in the lay box?
Those are 3 feet by 6 feet.
Wow.
which is crazy because this is why I'm saying I want to go bigger. But I have my female black dragon that's 5.5 feet, and she could barely get in there anymore, just because she's grown so much. But with females, you're supposed to leave the female in their enclosure and introduce the males. This way, the female feels the most dominant, and the male feels off guard, and because the males will bully the females every single time.
Mm.
So you're supposed to leave the female where they are. But with her, I've had her for so long, and she's like systematic. So I'll pair her with Shadow. Sometimes they don't breed right away. Sometimes they'll go like 4 or 5 months without breeding. And then, because they just like each other's company. And then all of a sudden, I can actually stimulate her cycle with feeding. So I'll overfeed her. She'll kick into that cycle, and then I'll start breeding. But I don't leave her in that enclosure. I leave Shadow in his enclosure because he is the biggest one in my place. And then I move her into her laying enclosure, and she lays, which is super unorthodox. But I always thought it was super unorthodox. But these days I've been thinking, and I'm like, if they're in the wild, a female doesn't stay near her laying site. She goes out, she finds these males, the males find her, whatever, but it's usually not near the laying site. And then they come back to their laying site. So I've been tossing up the idea if that's more natural, putting them in the laying enclosure, because they already know it, but they have to have that same enclosure because she knows where the nesting is. She knows where her site is, and that's where she's going to lay. You can't like switch it up on them. But I was wondering if that's even more like natural, because I put her in that enclosure. She goes, digs a hole, and lays within a couple of days.
Mm.
And that has a lot to do with my timing too, because it's a lot of once they copulate, you usually have 30 to 45 days before they're looking to lay, and you can kind of tell that based upon how they're walking. If they walk and their belly's scraping the ground, they're about to lay. And if their hips are really indented, where you can see their hip bones, she's within days. She comes off food, which they don't always do. If she comes off food, it's that day.
Mm.
So there's a lot to play there, and it's very risky doing it that way. But with her, I've always had no problem doing it.
And how is her personality compared to Shadow's?
At first, she was kind of like that croc monitor. she was a wild caught animal. She had been passed around a lot. She went through a lot of hands before she ended up with me, and she hated people. She wanted to bite me, and I think through trust, and it just shows you with that animal alone. I mean, I've had her like 6 years now. The amount I've gained with her is insane. I'll go in there, turn my back to her. She won't huff, she won't puff. She just stays still. But I couldn't go up and pet her. There's no way I would. But she tolerates me, and from a wild caught animal that I really haven't put in. I never really wanted to socialize her. I haven't put in the time to socialize her. But just my presence being around her, she knows me, and she's calm and doesn't try to rush me. I could turn my back to her and not even think about it. So she's different, a lot different than Shadow in that aspect. But yeah, with the species in general, that's pretty common. Females they're guarders. They know their natural little instinct is to guard themselves and their eggs. And you could break that with males pretty easily because they don't have that. But females are a lot harder. I have tame females, but I wouldn't recommend that as a first pet to somebody. I'd always say male.
What would happen if you went up to her and you pet her?
She'd huff and puff, but I think very quickly she would turn.
She'd turn and bite you?
Yeah.
How bad do you think that bite would be?
I think it'd be it depends if she grabbed, but the thing is like, it sounds crazy, but they're not like, if they're going to bite you, a monitor of any kind, they're not going to like grab you and hang on to you. They're like vicious. They're not like a Rottweiler or something that's going to try to rag you. They're going to bite, give you a warning, and if you proceed, then they're going to get worse. But that initial turn is just like, get the hell away from me. And it's kind of like a tap. It's not going to be terrible. It's not like that video of the green iguana that you watched where he turned and he wasn't letting go. He wanted to bite that guy. It's most of the time it wouldn't be like that. They give you like that warning tap first.
Hmm. And what about their tail? Do they use that?
Oh my God, all the time. I have welts on me every day. And it's mostly me. I operate very fast when I'm cleaning because there's a lot to do. And I'll go in there, clean, spot clean, do water changes, stuff like that, and I'm moving very fast, and they'll be sleeping and just like whack. They hit first and ask questions later. Especially with like I have ornatus, which is the ornate Nile monitors. That's another thing that people don't really breed. And I'm trying to break. Robert Fox bred the normal Nile monitor, Niloticus, and he was charging $1,000 a baby, which people are like, "Oh my god, for a Nile monitor!" But I think that's great. I mean, he put in the time and the effort. He's getting somewhat of the reward because he has a lot of expenses too, and you don't have that $25 like people say throwaway animal from the wild. They're paying for these animals and they're going to treat them because like, wow, I paid $1,000 for this and it's captive bred. So they're naturally just the money value is putting it into the right hands. So I think with breeding those would be huge. Plus, I've always liked ornatus. They're a lot bigger than your Nile monitor. And they're very bulldog-like. They're huge, but they have the attitude to match. So he likes to connect his tail to my leg, my back, my face almost every time I'm in there. So yeah, it's pretty regular that I'm getting whacked with one of those.
You're not getting that from Shadow though, right?
No, he's not. He's never even attempted it. And if he did, it would be ridiculous because he's never had to do it. So it would just be like he'd like shift his tail over.
Yeah,
it wouldn't be a full-fledged whack, but that female every time, especially if there's eggs in there. Like when I pull the lay box out, there's a door that shuts on the top, so she can't go in after I pull it out, and I have to go in the enclosure to shut that door. It gets me every time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is your cage design and the way that you're designing your cages now sort of universal across all the monitors you keep, just scaled up or down depending on the size of the animal?
With the water monitor, yeah, definitely. With all the Indicus, they were like that when I initially built the place, but realizing that they needed different things, I kind of like I just finished my Obor enclosure. Literally last night I was working on it. And all those pull-in lay boxes I was telling you about, that's not going to work with them. They probably would if that's the only thing they had is lay on the ground. But I learned that with the peach throats and the quints, that they like a mid-level kind of laying area. And I think that's due to how they lay in the wild. I think they would use a lot of like tree burrows and stuff like that to lay their eggs. I could be wrong, but that's just me assuming. And so with their enclosure, they have a PVC pipe that runs in and it goes out of the enclosure into a heated lay box. So they go into like this tunnel that goes outside, kind of like a tree hollow. So they're all different depending on what it is. And I kind of study them and I do a little research myself, but with something like the Obor, there's no information you're really going to find. The only person I know that has bred them is Chris Applin, and he's in Indonesia. So there's not a lot of research out there. So I'm kind of looking at pictures and looking at iNaturalist and stuff like that and trying to base my own opinions and just seeing how it works. And I mean, with that, it's really cool because I just put a camera on that enclosure. I set up the whole PVC thing and I put her in the enclosure for the first time. I was driving home because my house is like 40 minutes from my parents' house and my facility. I live in Pennsylvania. They're actually in New Jersey. So when I was driving home, I saw her dive down and she looked at the PVC and went right in.
Wow.
So within an hour, she was already using that lay box.
What diameter pipe is that?
That's a 4-inch.
4-inch PVC?
Yeah. Which is, I don't know. My adults will, and they like a tight area to lay, is the way they lay is they pack, like you would think it's cement, you wouldn't believe how tight they pack that soil after they lay. So they like everything confined and tight because they feel like they're in a termite mound or a tree hollow or something like that. So you don't want it wide open. I see a lot of water monitor guys, they have no tops on their lay box, and it works for them. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure it works, but it's all they have. If you think about a termite mound or a tree hollow, they're not going to have this open top. They're going to have, it's going to be all very tight. And I've noticed they like that a lot. So it might work to my advantage having it a 4-inch, but I'm just worried that when she's full of eggs, is she going to be able to still clear that 4-inch? And it's an easy fix. It's nothing that would involve too much. It's just cutting another pipe. But I tried 3-inch at first, and she can go in and out of it now, but I'm like, there's no way full of eggs she's going to be able to do that. So I went to the 4, and I still think it'll be all right, but I'm just going to monitor
it. Monitor it. And then, so how would you now, if somebody's buying a monitor from you, how do you advise them to set up their enclosure? Whether, like, I guess for a baby, like what are you telling them to do? Is it like an elevated basking area? And then what are you looking for that they have for temps and all that?
Yeah. So funny enough, I bred my first monitor, which was Coming Eye. As I was working on Black Dragons, I got a pair of Coming Eye, and I got the babies, and I was like, now what? I kind of did things a little backwards there. I thought they would be easy to get going. I mean, I bred Frilla Dragons. I bred a bunch of other geckos, all kinds of stuff before that. So I'm like, never had a problem with babies before. Water monitors are completely different. They're very challenging right out of the egg. So that's how I actually met Mike, and we became very good friends. And I mean, now we talk every day. He's like my mentor. He does too much for me. But I was like, what do I do with these things? And he's like, put them over water. And I'm like, what do you mean put them over water? And he's like, no substrate, over water. And he was so confident with it. And I was honestly so not. I was like, how do you do that? So he sent me a bunch of pictures and all this stuff. And I have them on my Facebook and my Instagram and all that stuff. And I built this 36-inch enclosure over water with just one cork tube that goes from side to side and a bunch of hanging plants that are going down. And I'm like, this is so simple. And he's like, that's the point. So one side is 120, water is about 80 to 84. And man, they thrive in that. I can't explain it. They love water, and they love knowing that water is there. So like, if they're scared of you, they dive into the water, even though it's crystal clear, they think they're covered. So they have a safety net, and that's what makes them thrive and eat and become very social. And that's how I designed all of these new baby enclosures. Is I built this rack that's 6 foot high. So the bottom of the enclosure is here, and it's above my head. So when I'm taking care of these babies, they're above me. So they're always looking down on me, thinking I'm just this little person or little animal or creature that goes in and out of their enclosure, and I don't bother them. So they become social and used to me just from that. I'm not looking down on them. I'm not a threat to them. Everything with monitors that attacks a monitor is from overhead. They're all either birds or big predators. So if you're level with them or below them, they feel completely secure. That is huge. So when I built these, I get these custom 4-foot glass enclosures built. I built the rack myself and put it there because it just gave me that much advantage, and I was able to socialize them that much faster. But if I were to tell a customer, I would just say like something readily accessible that would get you by for like a month or two would be a 36 Exoterra, and do the same exact setup, all water bottom, cork tube from side to side, and the same 120 to 80, and it'll thrive. They're very simple to set up after you get past that like 2-week mark. And that's something that I do. I don't let any babies go until they're a month old. So I let them they have a huge head start just by getting the baby. And then after that, you're probably going to go from like a 36 size enclosure to maybe like a 4-foot, and then to a 6-foot, then to an 8-foot. And then you got to be ready for a giant enclosure. Yeah.
How long are they going to last in that 36?
At 36, I'd say a month after getting it from me. And that's just to get it more acclimated. And
that is bananas.
Yeah, they grow quick, man. And like I said, that 2-monther is probably a foot and a half, and he's huge. So you don't want to leave him in there long. And after that, I'd say I try to jump right to the 6-foot, because then you have a little more time. And then that 8-foot, you probably have until like a year. And then you really got to start looking at an adult enclosure.
Wow. Okay. And then, so how are you setting up the adult enclosure?
The adults are all at 12 by 12 minimum, I would say. I'm sure I see full grown monitors in PVC setups, which drives me nuts. But that 12 by 12 would be a minimum for me. And that's what I tell everybody. Just be ready for that. For a black dragon, obviously, if you have like a Symbawa or something that I was talking about, that's still a water monitor, but they get max 4 feet. You don't need something that big. It's great if you can do it. But you'd probably be fine in like a 8 by 6 or something like that.
Okay. And how are you setting up like their basking areas and everything? Is it sort of like a raised area that's closer to the heat? That way you get that that vertical what's the word I'm looking for? Help me out here.
Gradient.
Yeah. So you're getting the gradient from top to bottom.
Yep. Yeah. Everything, all their bathroom spots are kind of like, if you walk into the enclosure, I have like different levels of shelves. And the top one is probably like 6.5, 7 feet, which is at first scared me because a water monitor really doesn't get that high, and you don't want them to take a fall from that height. I've never had, in the 4 years I've been set up there, I've never had that problem. I've never had anything fall and hurt anything. And then I have the different shelving, and then I just cut full trees down and lean them up, and so they can travel from bottom or shelf to shelf.
And how are you constructing those shelves?
They're just like, I did it at first out of decking boards, and the decking boards warped and were not how I wanted it to be. So I actually stole an idea from Jerry Wolf from his videos. He just treated 4x4s and butted up against each other, and he would use like a small piece and then use a full one. So you want it to be able to like drain out just in case they do go to the bathroom. You don't want it to sit up there. So it's just 2x4s that are stacked. So there's like 10 2x4s that are butt up against each other long ways, and it makes just a big shelf.
Okay. And then water can go through it and waste and all that good stuff.
Yeah, and get to the ground where you can do substrate changes. But like I said, with the water monitors, very rarely they're going anywhere but the water.
Okay.
They're almost toilet trained. They want to go in the water, which is gross because they want to go in the water and then swim with it. But
yeah,
can't tell them what to do.
Yeah. What kind of substrate do you use?
I use cypress. I used cocoa fiber for a long time, but it's so dusty. It was great. It really absorbed all of the waste, but if there was any, but the cypress is awesome because it holds a lot of humidity, which is huge. They need a high humidity, 70. Like I'm almost 80% all the time.
Wow.
So they need that 70, 80%, which definitely helps there. Between having the big water tubs and the cypress, I think it definitely helps me out. And cypress it's probably a lot easier to get by you. By me, everything is shipped up here on pallets, and then I just buy a pallet.
Yeah. The what about incubation? Like how long do they incubate, and like how big are your incubators?
My incubators, I actually make all of mine. They're like Coca-Cola fridges.
Okay.
And I make them all. I have 3 now, and they are, I'd say, like 3 foot by 4 foot, something like that. They can fit about 12 XL sim containers. So they are always at 86 degrees. I make them with a computer fan in the back, and then the heat tape that goes all the way around. But
is it like on the wall, like on the side walls, and it goes all the way and then across the bottom and up the side, the other side? Okay.
Yeah. They're very easy to make. People are always intimidated by making them, and I was the first time too. But I've made some for friends now. I made 3, actually 4, because I have a smaller one that I hatched at Lanthanotus out of. But most monitors are 86 degrees. And I'd say the indicus were around 155 to 170 days. Water monitors are typically 180 days on the dot. I've had some go 200, 210 days.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, geez, I think I asked you everything I possibly could about monitors. Is there anything else you want to add?
I don't think so. I could talk forever about them, but I don't think there's anything else I wanted to add there.
What about the, all right. So I think we can get to the Borneo earless monitors. And are they're a monitor?
They call them a monitor. They're Lanthanotus. They're their own. They're not like Verenidae. I think they just call them monitor. I don't think they'd be considered an actual monitor. They have monitor-like behaviors, but most of they're totally their own thing.
Okay. And how many of those do you keep?
I only have a pair.
Okay.
When I first got them, it was something that I couldn't afford. People were asking $10,000 a pair plus.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first wanted them, they were told that you can't even obtain them, that we were never going to see them in the hobby. So I waited until the people started getting them around, and I'm like, man, I would love to get these. And a friend of mine is producing them still down by you. And he had an adult pair he was letting go, and I had a pair of giant Lacerdas. Blanking on the scientific name right now, but they're the Grand Canary Lacerda.
Okay.
And they're very rare. And I was like, listen, man, I'll trade you these.
Can you describe those to me?
It's like a mini Tegu.
Okay.
Like you see like jeweled Lacerdas and stuff like that. They get like a foot long.
Yeah.
These get 2 foot long, and they're very, very bulky, and they're all black.
Okay.
I saw them at a show locally. I paid out the ear for them. But it was just something that was unorthodox for me and very out of my norm. And I liked them, but I always wanted Earless way more. So I offered in the trade. He took it, and I got the pair. When I got the pair, they were adults, but I don't think they were breeding size. So I had them for about a year, and I did a YouTube video on them and stuff. I was so excited, and I never thought I was going to be able to actually breed them. And they're so weird because they like a temperature of 81 degrees and nothing else. Where they're from, it stays pretty consistent at 81. So even a drop down to 78 is not what they want. 82 isn't what they want. So that 71 is like the magic number. So I didn't know that. And I had the water at 81, but the land at 78. And it got warmer naturally in the summer. So I went in there one day, and I'm like, they were in the cork tube, like, because they like to like wade in the water. So I have cork tubes that go like half into the water, and there's like a thin layer of water actually in the cork tube. So they'll sit in there and wait all day, and then at night they come out and hunt. But so they were sitting in there, and I'm like, are they breeding? And I zoomed in with my camera, and they were locked. So I was like, holy crap, they're actually breeding. So I did more research about them, and they bred for like a week. And I've never had them separate. They've always been together. And 100 days later, she laid eggs, which is crazy for a gestation period. And she laid, I messed up. This is where I messed up with that temperature thing, because I had the 81 in the water, but the land was 78. I had no basking spot because they don't like light. They're like a mole where they have little beady eyes, and they don't like any kind of light. So that's why they're always hiding in the shadows. So I don't have any heat on the land. I just had a T5 kind of overcasting everything, and a bunch of places where they can get out of the light. So she tried to find that 81 where she wanted to lay. So she laid in the water, and I caught 2 of the eggs before they rolled off into the water, but there was 5 in the bottom of the enclosure, and they were all perfect. Actually, no, 5 of them were perfect, 2 were bad right from the gate. And if she laid them on land, I would have had 5 babies, but I was only able to salvage 1. And it was just because she laid it within like a little tiny bit of water underneath. And I think unlike a monitor egg or any other gecko egg or anything like that, they can handle some kind of water just because of where they're from. I don't think the females are coming out of water too much to lay their eggs. So they probably get floods and stuff like that where they can handle being wet and then drained out, but they can't be fully submerged. So I hatched 1 baby. I still have him. And I've seen breeding behavior again, but nothing, no locked or no more eggs after that. But that 81 is crucial with them.
So that's a $5,000 baby?
People ask that, but I think a realistic number is like 3.
3, okay.
3, 5. Yeah, that's why I've seen people actually sell them now.
And how big are the babies when they come out?
Oh my God. I never have been more concerned about a baby in my life. It was smaller than a crested gecko baby. It was.
Oh my God, dude.
Yeah. It freaked me out. I'm like, there is no way I'm going to be able to feed this thing worms. And for a long time, I would drop worms and just leave them, and they were disappearing. So I knew it was eating. And then I put a video up on my thing not too long ago that I was like, one day I was like, you know what? I'm going to try it. And I put it on in my finger. I just went down to him, and he swam up and was taking them out of my hand. And I'm like, okay, I feel a lot more comfortable now. So he went from, I raised him for the first 2.5 months in the incubator because I was too afraid of dropping from that 81 that he wouldn't make it. And after that, I mean, once he took from my hand, I'm like, all right, you're ready to go into your adult enclosure. But he's still only this big. They're the slowest growing thing I've ever raised. They,
Is that why they're so expensive? They're just that hard?
I think so. I think they're. I think once you got a rhythm down and you can get them going, I think they're pretty easy. But I'm still trying to figure it out. So.
And are your adults wild caught or are they captive bred?
I would assume they're either bred in Germany or something like that. I don't think there's a quota to take them out of the wild anymore. So I think they were captive bred somewhere. I just don't think they were captive bred.
Okay.
Yeah.
Man, dude,
I'm not sure. So I didn't ask a ton of questions. I was just so excited to get them.
Yeah, I bet. What are your plans with those? Just keep. Do you plan on breeding and whatever you get, just hold back and try to produce more of them?
I would like if I got a clutch next time. Say I got 5 babies, I would definitely try to do some bloodline swaps and get different bloodlines. But I think I would let 1 or 2 go because that's the whole point of all of it is to let other people be able to work with it and breed them too. I don't want to hoard them. They're accessible enough where if I really needed to get more, I could. So I have no problem letting some stuff go. But like with back to monitors, with like my new Collis, they're so rare and they're my favorite monitor besides Black Dragon. And if I were to get them to breed, which I've been trying to for what feels like forever, and hit every hurdle possible, if I got them to breed, I would hold all them back because Philippines are closed and nobody else has them, and you can't get them. But something like that, I would let other people have a chance with them too.
How many? So you mentioned the bloodline swap with the Shinosaurus as well. How many people are working with these? Keith McPeak is working with both of those, right? With the Shinosaurus and the Earless monitors.
Yeah, I know. There's that guy Josh Cold Blooded down by you that he produces a lot of Earless. So that's actually who I got mine from, my Earless. I'd reach out to him and ask him if he could do some bloodline swaps with the Earless. And with the Shinies, I have a good friend who's like a mentor too. He owns a pet store out here. And he's bred Shinies since I was a kid. So I've been asking him a million questions, but I could always do bloodline swaps with him. I think there's probably a handful of people doing Shinies. I know Pangea has some. Armin from Herb has some. So they're in a lot of good hands where I think people will produce a lot this year.
Good. Yeah, it'd be cool if they became more readily available.
Yeah, definitely.
What do you prefer, the Borneos or the Shinies?
The Borneos are something that you have to take into consideration. You're going to buy and look at an empty enclosure. You're not going to see them very often. When you do, they're going to be hidden, just looking at you. And when you go to get them, they're going to take off. And I've never been bit, but it's something that I heard is absolutely terrible to take a bite from.
Really? From them?
Yep. They have one of the strongest bite forces, believe it or not.
No way.
Yep.
They look like they'd be little sponges.
And you could see it. I mean, their whole head is just a muscle.
Yeah.
So I don't really, I handled them maybe 3 times since I had them. And it's just to check them. I wanted to see if she was gravid, check her, like stuff like that. But if I had to pick between the two, honestly, I'd probably say the Shinies. Just because they're very personable, they're almost comical, and they're like little piranhas with legs. They're
and they don't. The Shinies, do they run away as readily as the Borneos do? Like, are they as terrified of you, or do they habituate a little bit better?
The biggest thing with them is they're not nocturnal like the Earless are. They hang out in the shadows. Like even I have plants that go into the water, they hang out underneath those. And once I realized that, like I had everything wide open when I first got them. I'm like, man, they're not going to use any of this. So everything is like covered now. Like there's plants everywhere that they can hide underneath. So you don't really see them. With the Shinies, you're going to see basking and hanging out, and they do run, but they're not really something that you can handle that much either. It's not. Both of those aren't species that I would say is like a bearded dragon where you can go in there and pick them up. They're kind of just something to watch because you don't want to get bit by a Shinosaurus either. They have a nasty bite, and they act. Crocodilis, their name is a perfect name for them because they act so much like a mini crocodile.
That's so cool.
As soon as you touch them, mouth open, they hang out in the water and wade like a crocodile. It's like having a little mini foot-long crocodile.
And what size enclosure do you keep the Borneos in?
The Borneos, I have a glass guy by me that makes a crazy glass enclosure. So all that stuff I have custom made, and he's in like, I think it's 4.5 by 2 by 2.
Nice.
Yep. And then he makes the dam for the land is about 10 inches. So, cause they love to dig. Once she's about to lay, they tunnel like a mole. They almost act like a reptile, like has mole tendencies. They don't dig out like a monitor would. They burrow. They make like these caverns, like anthills, kind of in the soil. Yeah.
What kind of soil are you putting in there for them?
I do 50% topsoil, 50% sand.
Okay. And are you putting in like any isopods or springtails or anything?
With everything I have, I don't really use that stuff readily because monitors doesn't do anything for them.
Sure.
So I don't really use all that stuff. It's really just a basic sand and soil setup.
Do you put plants in there?
Yeah.
I have like fill it in
and fake plants.
Okay. What are your go-to live plants in those enclosures?
Super simple stuff. Because like I said, I'm not good with keeping plants alive, so I'll use like pothos, stuff like that you literally can't kill.
I don't know, man. Even I've killed some pothos.
yeah, I have to. They're a lot harder to kill, I should say.
Yeah.
I'm good with plants. I want to be better with plants, but that's a project for another day.
Yeah. What about for in the water? Is that the pothos as well?
Yeah, pothos will go on like near the water. I don't know if it goes really into the water, but it goes like on top of the water.
Okay.
I don't have a ton in there. A lot of the stuff is fake because everything I've put in there, they kind of uproot. The female will dig underneath stuff and push it into the water, and they're a lot stronger than you would think for a tiny little animal. Like I have a huge stump in there that the male likes to hang out in, and he moves that thing all over the enclosure.
Really?
It's like the stump is like that big. It's a big, heavy stump that's waterlogged too. So it's impressive the strength that they have.
Yeah. And what about the Shinosaurus? Do they destroy their enclosure too, or are they a little bit?
Theirs is all fake because they will destroy all.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that I'm cool with having something that you just look at, so like the Shinosaurus is just really attractive to me because they are so bizarre looking and so cool too, like little dinosaur crocodilians.
Yep. No, there's something in its own category for sure. They're something I've always wanted, but was also intimidated on how to keep. And there's no reason to be intimidated on how to keep those. They are so simple. Anybody can keep them. If you keep crested geckos, you can keep them. It's just that initial setup. It's going to take you some time. So you got to be prepared for that and doing water changes. But they're amusing because they see the worms. The biggest thing with them is they eat when it rains. If it makes sense, because when you spray them down, all the earthworms are going to come up when it rains to get the rain. So you spray them down first. They like come out of this state because most of the time they're just sitting there waiting. They come out of this state and they're like, uh-oh, it's time to eat. And they come running onto the land and you just taunt feed them earthworms.
Wow.
Which is, it's really cool. The rain cycle with them is definitely what they live for. Like when I get them to breed, even this time, I spray them down first. Once they realize it's raining, then they get into like a hyperactive mode, and that's when I pair them.
That's so cool.
Rain means a lot to them for some reason. It's got to be where they're from.
Yeah, that's really neat. I saw your green vine snake enclosure, and do you still have that set up?
No, that was I can't even tell you. That was a long time ago.
Dude, I scrolled back on your IG.
That was a long time. They were cool. That was one of those impulse things that a friend was getting them, and I'm like, man, they're cool. And that's something I always wanted. And that was actually in my living room at my house. I built a 7-foot enclosure that's built into my wall that I can access from a room behind it. And they were really fun. It was just, I'm not a live feeding kind of guy. I love all animals. Not a huge fan of rats. That's probably the only thing. Kind of works out with the monitors because that's what I feed them. But I don't like feeding live, and they needed peepers and frogs, and just hear them screaming when they got attacked by the snake was my thing.
Yeah. That was an incredible enclosure, though. I mean, it was. You said how wide was it? 7 feet.
7 foot,
yeah, and it was like all like gray river stone on the bottom. The whole bottom was water, right? And then just branches going back and forth across all 7 feet of that. It was insane.
Thank you. That was something I saw. It's very similar. A guy in Thailand did. It was smaller, but it was all water on the bottom, and he had guppies in there, and they were striking the guppies out of the water. And I'm like, how freaking cool is that? So once I got offered the opportunity to get them, I jumped on it. But I love snakes. It's just not my thing. And the whole frog eating thing definitely wasn't my thing. I didn't like that at all. And the anoles too. They ate anoles.
Oh, okay.
I like anoles. I kept anoles for a long time. So.
How were you getting those? Were you just buying feeder anoles?
Yeah, I was buying feeder anoles, which is every time I fed them, because there were so many in there, it was like $100. So
wow,
it was very not cost effective thing.
What do you have in that enclosure now?
It's empty. I'm trying to decide what I want to put in there. I thought about the Shinosaurus; it'd be cool, but I don't know. I don't know what I want to use that for yet, because where I'm sitting right now is actually my house is over there, and this is a building that's going to be just for indicus at my own house. It's empty now, but it's 2,000 square feet, 1,000 up, 1,000 down, and this is going to all be enclosures for just raise up indicus and stuff. And eventually, I'm going to make a crosswalk from the building to here, because I have to walk outside now, but I'm going to make a catwalk where I can walk from like my kitchen area straight into here.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, because I don't plan on moving anytime soon. My dad, thankfully, my whole family's into animals. So when he buys his next farm, I can just move my facility and stay where I'm at. Because I like my house where I'm at now. This is my first house, but I'm on 4 acres. I have this outbuilding. I don't really have a need to move quite yet, so I'll let him do all the hard work.
Yeah, that's perfect. You're lucky. Yes. Yeah, when I get my snake building put in, I don't want it more than like a 15 or 20 foot walk from my front door. I want to be able to go out and have a paved walkway where I can go right to the front door of it, and it's close and easy to get to.
Yeah, no, it's essential. Sure.
So do you keep any snakes anymore, or did you get out of them?
Funny enough, I have a green and yellow hybrid anaconda right now. That's
interesting.
All I have. I didn't get it on purpose. A friend of mine wanted these hets that I produced, and he didn't have enough money to do so. So I was like, just send me anaconda, and I'm sure a friend of mine will want it. So that's all I have right now. Right. My wife loves snakes. My wife is into snakes, but with her being pregnant and all that stuff, we had to let them go for now. We have enough going on. I have 5 dogs, 2 Sphinx cats. We have parrots, all the reptiles. So it's a lot to take care of.
Oh my God, dude. I can't imagine. I have 1 dog and like 20 something snakes. I don't know how you do it.
Thank God I have my wife. That's all I got to say.
Yeah.
She's a nurse, and she's been a nurse. She works in oncology, and she runs 3 hospitals. So she's naturally a doer and a caretaker. So doing the reptiles is just, she loves it just because she's caring for something. So I got lucky there.
Yeah. I feel like so many people in this hobby owe so much to their wives.
True. Definitely true. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have gotten into it. I mean, I got out, and my dad had a group of monkey tail skinks. And when I met her, and I was just taking time for myself, I had to figure out myself and everything that was going on in my life. So when I met her, that's all he had. And I took one out and I handed it to her. And she's like, I've never seen you that excited about something. And I'm like, this is what I did before I met you. And she's like, you should get back into it. She goes, that's where your passion lies. And from that day, she probably regrets it now, because now it's a lot more stressful. But from that day, that's where it all started again. And just, I went tenfold. I mean, I was nowhere near the animals that I have now. I had maybe 20, maybe 10 pairs before, and it was just random stuff. I had no real direction. Wow. I had sailfins and monkey tails and tortoises and everything. I had fly river turtles and just really a little bit of everything. And then I found my niche, and I got back in.
Yeah, I just had on MJ, and we were talking about, he was talking about how influential his wife is and was in kind of pushing him, and my wife, same thing. So yeah, it's like, you got to imagine there's a lot of people out there where their partner is like, let's be real, like this is insanity, and
Yeah.
then you have the other end of the spectrum where it's, I don't know what it is. If they must just see it in us, the passion, and then it's that push in the direction.
Yeah. Because I'm not really like this with anything else, but the people I was with in my past, they were like, "You're nuts. This isn't something that is sustainable. You can't do this. It's not normal." All that stuff. But when you have somebody that really is in your corner and they see your passion there, that they push you towards it. And it blows my mind that, because it's a hard thing to do, especially with all the work that she puts towards it. So it's very, very cool that she's like that, and that there is people like that out there with wives.
Yeah.
Anything.
And it's a financial burden too. I mean, you'd be lying if you said it wasn't. I mean, caging animals, food, all of it. The electrical bill, I can't even imagine what your electric bill is.
My electric bill a month is probably over $2,000. So that's why I try to explain to people, because I'm not the only monitor guy that does. I'm sure reptiles across the board are expensive, but monitors to achieve that 140-degree basking isn't cheap. And in 40 cages, and then food on top of it. And there's guys, again, not knocking anybody, with crested geckos and stuff like that, that don't have a ton of overhead. You don't really need light. You could use lighting, but you don't need a lot. And I keep geckos too. I breed geckos too. So I get that end. But we almost probably end up, if we make anything, we probably make the same, because our overhead is so high and we get so much for the monitors. But at the end of the day, we're probably getting the same thing.
Yeah.
It's a lot, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I couldn't picture myself. I keep a lot of stuff. Like I said, I love monkey tails. I want to get them again. There's a lot of oddball stuff like Australian water dragons. I love agamids. Agamids is like what started me besides Cyclura, and then the monitors was just like top tier for me. But I want to get back into the agamids and breed frills again and stuff like that. So, it's not a cheap thing. It's definitely very expensive.
At least it's you're putting a lot of effort and you're yielding results and putting it into the hobby. Like it's not a lost cause where you're just like using all this energy for no reason. Like and you're sharing your information, and you're just a really positive force and pushing in a positive direction, and you're working with rare stuff and everything. So that's awesome.
Thank you. And it's hard because people, I'm going to post later on this weekend, if not next week, about how the albinos didn't hatch and stuff like that. Because I feel like people need to see more of that too, because they see all these positive things that you're doing, and like, I know what that feels like too, because I was on the receiving end of like seeing people like Kevin McCurley and all these guys like doing amazing things. And it's like, what am I doing wrong? Why can't I achieve these things? So people need to see the truth of it. Besides that, like for every success that you see that I might have, there's probably 4 failures before it. And a lot of people don't share that. And I keep telling myself I'm going to share that more. And no matter how it looks on my end, at least it'll help other people realize the truth of breeding and stuff like that, because it's a roller coaster. It's up and down. You'll be at your top. Like perfect example, last week I vended Tinley. I wanted to vend Tinley since I was a kid, and I wanted to vend Tinley not just with animals, but animals I produced. And I sat at that show with a table full of animals I produced, and I felt like I achieved the goal of mine that I was when I was a kid. And then you get home and you have this animal isn't laying the way you want it to. This project fell through, and then the albinos didn't hatch. So you have like 3 hits right back to back after that. So you go from here to all the way down here. And that's the truth of keeping and breeding. And I think people need to see that more, instead of just seeing like social media, you just see everybody at their height. So I try to really show it all.
Yeah. As great as social media is, it has the tendency of making everybody's lives look like they're absolutely incredible, but you don't see that when, somebody puts the phone down, maybe they're in an argument with their wife, or, their kids just chopped up their sofa, like who knows, like everybody is still just a person, and I think, and when you keep animals, you're bound to run into a lot of complications for sure.
Yeah, that's what Mike, my mentor, and I always say. It's like there's a lot of hobbies out there where you can keep like model trains and you can put them on the shelf and they're fine. There's no care there. You just go and look at them. Animals are not that. They're living things, and the opposite of living things is not living things. So you got to put that time in and take care of them. And sometimes it's not always the greatest, and sometimes it's out of your control. I have a monitor right now that I couldn't figure it out. I took her to vets around here, and I couldn't figure out what was going on with her. And she was eating, active, but her hips were totally sunken in, and it looked like she was going to lay eggs, but I knew there was no eggs in there because I have an ultrasound machine. My vet x-rayed her. I could see there was nothing in there. So Dr. Stahl down in Virginia, he's about 6 hours from me. I sent her down to him. He is the best of the best. Anybody out there that needs a vet, and he'll pick up animals at the airport. He'll FedEx animals. I actually listened to his 2-hour presentation at Reptile Talks last year. That's how I met him. And he figured it out, and we're thinking it's just a simple kidney infection. And I'm hoping that's all it is. And he's got her on antibiotics and IV and all that stuff, and hopefully she'll be fine. But it's just having some people like that in your corner too for unexpected things that not anticipating for. And stuff like that happens all the time when you have a large collection.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely a reality in the hobby. What about Komodo dragons? You ever think you'll have one?
God, that's a dream of mine. That's like there's dreams and then there's ultimate goals. And you always think in the back of your head, you're like, yeah, that's never going to happen, but it would be cool. And then I saw Ari and Ryu and Quetzal down there get one. And I'm like, I got to shoot for that. I got to become ZA8 and get permitted and all that stuff. And just be able to work. I just want to be, first off, I just want to be around one once. I've seen them through glass. I've been to San Diego Zoo. I've seen them through glass, but I want to interact with one. As crazy as that sounds, I interact with basically one every day. He's just a little smaller. So I want to just be around one, and then we'll try to tackle getting one in the future. But I want to obviously do it the right way and get it permitted and all that stuff. But I don't think it's unachievable. I just think it's going to be a very, very hard thing to do.
Hey, it's good to have goals, you know? Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's, I've seen them at the Tampa Zoo here in Florida. I guess they breed them there because they had a bunch of babies in a baby enclosure. Yes. And, yeah, they have a couple that, like you said, you can look at them through the acrylic. And then I think there's an area that's, just chain link that you can look at them through. And gosh, what incredible animals they are.
So crazy. They're so cool. I think people should be able to keep them, honestly, in the right hands. Obviously, people should be vetted. Like I think a lot of big species or even venomous, I think you should be permitted and vetted. But I think people should be able to keep them. I think obviously not go to a regular reptile show and pick one up like anything else. But I think they're not much different. They're not much different. I had the pleasure of holding Parentes at Ty's place last time I was there, and that was a goal that I was mind blown. I couldn't believe, like I was staring at it through the glass and I couldn't believe I was in the presence of one. And then he goes, go around back and go in. And I was like, what? I was like, I must have been like a kid in the candy store. I think I ran, knocked his staff over and dove in the enclosure. And I mean, I sat on the ground with Erwin, and it was probably one of the coolest moments of my life because he came off of the back ledge, walked right up to me. I put my hand out, and he climbed up my arm and wrapped his head around my neck and just sat there. And I'm like, this is a Parenti. It just jumped on my shoulders, and it was so cool. I had to get on the plane right after that, and I was covered in sand and dirt, and I could care less. It was awesome. And I still got to thank Ty. I can't thank Ty enough for that, because when else are you going to hold a Parenti in your life?
Yeah. Yeah. Ty is such a nice guy. He's definitely a positive driving force in the hobby for sure.
Definitely.
All right, man. I got a kid's birthday party to run to, and dude, I feel like we could have talked for another hour and a half. I appreciate you coming on. We'll have to do it again. And thanks for all your knowledge, man.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you for the platform. And it was a lot of fun. I had a great time.
Hell yeah.